Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Lots of familiar faces. Nice to see. I wish to call to order this regular meeting of Council at 4 p.m. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Are we okay over there? We're good?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Are we good over there? Okay. Notice of video recording. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items? Hearing and seeing none. Looking for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I don't mean to interrupt, but were there any amendments to the agenda before you approve it?
Were there a couple?
If I may, I think we had discussed one of the delegations, Mr. McLean, was unable to make it today.
Thank you.
And so he looks forward to presenting to council at a future meeting. And then
Is there a second
there
one?
was one other report, report 10.1. I think we were going to defer that to a future meeting of council.
Perfect.
Otherwise, you can proceed to adopt as amended.
We're moving to point one.
Yeah, that's going to be postponed till Mr. Lawrence's return.
Copy.
And okay, thank you for that. So with those couple additions, I'll start that over. So we do have a couple additions, and regarding removal of the delegation and the removal of 10.1 in reports. Can I get approval of that?
I'll move the. Go ahead.
I'll move that.
I will second the removal of the agenda with the.
Okay. Lively bunch here today. Right from work to the seat here. Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you for the correction, Paula. I know I was supposed to read that before I sat in the chair here. So, okay, adoption of the minutes. First off, from February the 22nd, regular minutes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried. And the adoptions of the February 24th special budget minutes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, moving on to public input. Opportunity for the members of the public. If you'd like to have any comments or any questions, I just asked you to stand at the podium. If there's anybody who'd like to ask us anything. Yeah, for sure. Welcome. Just your name and address when you get up to the microphone. It's nice to have people back in the room.
Right. So good.
Can we just make sure?
My name is Patricia Sieber. I live at 1058 Helen Road. And did you want, what else did you need?
That's all I need.
That's
Patricia.
all you need.
Yeah,
Okay. I guess I was thinking that the question would come at the end of the session, but I'll put it to you now.
Okay.
You may view my question as rhetorical and having no immediate answer, but there are questions I would like for you to ponder.
Mm-hmm.
My questions stem from a statement in your strategic plan, which I found on the website when I was looking for information about the Village Green and how the progress of it as how from inception to possibly now. And so I quote the mayor, "Our strategic plan is about goals, actions, and prioritizing improvements in both communication and community engagement. This council is committed to listening to our residents, and we have set actions based on what we have heard and to improve municipal processes. And we look forward to working with our staff and ensure our residents and businesses are put first in any decisions and policies. Our residents define the character of our community, and Ucluelet is still a place where community spirit thrives." Those are the words and from your strategic plan. So my first question is, Why did these words not guide the progress of the Village Green proposal? The second question is, have they guided and are they guiding the proposed changes to the Peninsula Road corridor? I can find no evidence of contracts for these projects being awarded beyond the planning process. So is there not time to adhere to the words in your strategic plan and engage and communicate with the public? So I sincerely submit this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for reading our strategic plan, because we're very proud of it. And I guess for us, we do feel, I'll wait till you sit there, Patricia, so I can look you, talk to you. Do you have something? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make a statement that I really applaud you all for coming out and speaking so we can hear you, because your voices are heard. I think it's really important for everyone to do that, but not everyone does that. And we are committed to being out in the community 24/7, 7 days a week. I don't know what, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Please don't call us 24 hours. But we talk a lot to people in the community, and we do have other information that unfortunately isn't here on Zoom, isn't recorded for people to then watch at their leisure, and isn't in this room right now. But there are lots of other citizens in the community that we talk to and we listen to, and we have lots of communication with on a daily basis. So I just want to put it out there that your voices are really, really, really valuable, but there's lots more voices that we have that approach us from day to day, and I don't know how else to say that.
Marilyn?
Thank you. Through the mayor, there is a letter from Patricia in the agenda package. It's 12.2, and perhaps we can get some answers for you at that point when we address the letter.
Yeah, and I think that'd be fair. I'd like to speak directly to your letter when it comes up at the end, and be able to give you some insight and some of the things that we've done to date, and hopefully that will give you a bit of a sense of comfort going forward for sure, Patricia. But as Councillor Cole said, we do appreciate people coming in here, and we do appreciate letters. This is nothing that has to be no gloves up here. We're here to represent each one of you, and I hope that at times we get it right about 80% of the time. We're never going to get anything 100% of the time, but we want people to feel that the decisions that get made on this side of the table do reflect what all of you would like to see. And again, we'll dive into your letter specifically at the end. There's another one, if you don't mind just going to the podium.
Green light. My name is Jan Dresky. I own the Crow's Nest at 205 Main Street in Ucluelet. I think with the newly formed group, Ucluelet Concerned Citizens, where we made an address at the last meeting, we felt very much that we didn't know the process, or we didn't know how to engage in the process that was the Village Green and now the Peninsula Road Safety Plan, I think it's called. So when and where does the public get to have input at the design level, at the beginning, and when do we have the opportunity to see what's coming and comment on it and have suggestions for it? I know COVID has played part of it, but it's certainly not all of it. So I think that the frustration that many of us have felt is that, we're kind of being told after the fact, here it is. And we're like, wait. So I think that's the biggest frustration. I know that in the past, the councillors used to represent each group in town, and I know that that has changed. But it doesn't allow a very easy form of communication if groups don't have a councillor member to interact with, to ask questions of, to get feedback from. So it's it'd be nice to have some kind of way or some. I don't think any of us know how to besides running into you in town or phoning you up, how do we get this public information? How do we know about what's going on? How do we find it out? Not everybody's on Facebook. So I think it's really important that we have channels. It seems like the channels are broken. It seems like we don't have really easy ways to access the information anymore. So I think that's the main point for many of us in the group. Anything else anybody wants to say? So thank you.
Councillor Cole, do you want to make a comment?
I just want to say that I think what Jen just described is silos, and nobody wants to feel like they're in a silo. And we do encourage people to come here, and I think this is one avenue, or the primary and key avenue, to gather this information, because we don't talk about anything outside of these doors unless they're under those certain numbers of whatever closed sessions, which I can't remember what the numbers are for. But you guys are all super involved, and nothing is happening outside of this meeting, these regular meetings that aren't something, if you were coming every time or watching every session, there's nothing else going on. We're not making any other decisions any other way. And we are, even in these sessions, deciding how we're going to come to the people who aren't sitting here and the people who aren't watching, and how are we going to get their input. And we're doing that in every meeting in some way, shape, or form. So I think that might be part of the answer. It might be part of the solution. And yet we only have so many chairs. So, but yet we have Zoom. So, thank you.
If I don't mind just answering the question first, and I'll get to you in a moment. So directly regarding, it's always a challenge getting information. I've been here with Marilyn for 7 years, and I'm quite proud of how we've engaging with societies differently. I've seen you there many times. I think we have said, quite clearly that if you have any concerns, reach out to us. We all have working persons in the community here, and the demands of us going to regular societies multiple times out of the month. I think there's a financial commitment or compensation that the council or the district would have to pay. I've chosen to see us do that in a different light. As always, the concern citizen cool it. I remember being on a group like that in 2008 when the world was on its nose, and I felt the council was not being reactionary towards the building community at the time that was all going bankrupt at the time. Seeing the economic turn in this community at this time, I think is completely different. As I've said to Mr. McIntosh and to a lot of you, it's almost like we're strangers. If you want to reach out to us, I'll meet you guys for a coffee. But the reality is, if you just have one counselor, whether it's the produce aisle or me as my business or work, or Rochelle saving your life, the reality is the reality is that we have no power, and we hear different things. So it's really important that we all hear the information at the same time. And I'm not trying to make formal that we're hiding behind the glass here, but when all five of us hear this, the concerns, whether it's through a society, through a delegation, through a committee of the whole, where it's not so formal, we're into just listening to that and trying to making sure that you all feel that we have a good pulse on things. Things do fall through the crack. This has been a topic between what's going on in the downtown core, what's going on in Peninsula Road. Over the years, there's been lots of information provided to the public with what's going on, and we will be ensuring, as the plans get more formalized and with options, they will be presented to the public for engagement about some of the changes. But I can't stress enough, the highway of Peninsula Road down in front of your store is owned by the province. It is considered Highway 4. When you get onto Larch Road or Matterson Road, we can do whatever we want. We can close things, we can widen things, but we're trying to ensure that Highway 4, working with the ministry, that it actually has a bit more safe passage for a lot of the user groups. And knowing with what's happening in Parks Canada with bicycles and stuff, bicycles are going to become very popular, and trying to ensure that user group is well protected while they're driving in town. So, I've seen some preliminary plans as recently as today, and I think that when they're ready to go out to the public, which will be soon, there will be some engagement for sure, Jen. And for us, for Marilyn and I, we've been wanting to do to see the Peninsula Road look a little bit differently. Not look like downtown Vancouver, but just meet the West Coast needs. That gives us a bit more safe passage to just allow us to be able to use that in a different flow. So that's been something that's been on our radar for a long time. And what staff is doing is following through on some of the wants and needs that this council would like to see happen.
Is there a way for us to know what's coming before it's actually presented?
You will be, your group and the community will be notified. We have Samantha now who works on our communication. So, as we always say, we're working on some better communication skills. We always are. And as always, we can always do better. So, we hope to have most of your support with going forward what we see for Peninsula Road.
I just want to be very clear that aside from getting the agenda earlier on at the end of last week, I didn't know any more prior to that than you do about a lot of things that are coming to us. That's when we find out we're not, we get a few days to figure it out ourselves and to collaborate in conversation with staff on how we feel about things or to clarify some questions we may have about the agenda. But we don't know about these things any sooner than you do. We're not conversing prior to. And
Yeah, it's turned into a Cal meeting for sure, yeah. Anyways, I'm just trying to respect these people and make sure you get your answers.
Green light. Okay. What was I going to say? Uh-oh. Oh, yes. I think that where most people are feeling frustrated is that it comes out almost as a fait accompli, and it's like, when do we get to have input? I know COVID is part of it. I know maybe we're going to go back to having open houses and things like that, but it's, and I realize that you guys don't get it any sooner than we do, but how do we interact with planning? How do we say, oh, I have an idea about this. I have ideas. And I've sent emails to the planning department with no reply. So it's just difficult to participate and feel that you're part of it if there's no interaction. It seems to be more of a one-way street, and I think everybody's keen to have their ideas put forward and to hear the ideas and where the ideas are coming from and how to interact with them. I think that's all we're asking. It's just communication.
Spontita, do you want to say something? Any comments on your behalf? Nope, sorry, I didn't see that. I seen one has.
No, I had nothing to add.
Okay,
No.
I'm just curious back to staff then, regarding this whole. Actually, it's on the radar a little bit later on in the agenda, and we're going to. You're heard, Jan. Again,
Thank you. I'll go sit down.
Yeah, you can sit down if you wish. Councillor McEwen.
That's what I was just going to point out, that the 10.3 is on the agenda, and it does give a background, and the public open house was held December of 2019 about the Peninsula Road. I know, a long time ago, right? And not everybody attends the open houses. I get that. But that's why these reports have the background information. And I think it even says that on the website, the sticky notes from that open house are still available.
It was a very good open house.
Well, how they put up things all around the room and people write on sticky notes and put them in. Apparently those boards are still on the website. I think that's what the report says.
You know what? I think, if you don't mind, we'll dive into that when it comes into that staff report. And, we haven't had people in the room here, and I just really want to respect your guys' questions and stuff. So it's a bit of a learning thing for us as well. And, but are there any other questions regarding things that are not in our agenda, which we are going to be diving into a little bit later on? Mr. Forrest? I'd love to always hear what you're going to say. You calm down. You're on your blood pressure medicine? Did you want to make any comments? Oh, no, you can go to the microphone if you don't mind. Oh, you're jumping. Look at it. Easy, easy, easy. We're civilized here. We're not at the golf course. Okay? Rowdy bunch. We'll just make sure your microphone's on, Mr. Forrest. And
Green light is showing.
there you go. Okay.
Anyway, I'm Bruce Forrest, 372 Marine Drive. I have a question. Who paid for all the survey work that was done on Peninsula Road that took place, in the last month or so? They were all up and down the road surveying.
As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be getting into that in the agenda, so I'll make sure we ask that staff that question, and then we'll get you that answer.
Just ask me if I had a question.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, well, I asked if there was some that wasn't on our agenda for today, but no problem.
That, and I have one comment.
Yes, sir.
It seems to me, and I've said this to several people, that it appears that the cart is being put in front of the horse. We have these surveyors come on, and like the revitalization, there was all some fait accompli, right? It seemed that it was all done and finished, and then November 31st or 30th, or December 31st, we were no more comment. You can't say anything. You know, if you're true to the statement in your strategic plan or whatever it was called, we should be listened to at any point, and especially before the place is surveyed. Come to
I don't fully agree with that, but I don't want to go back and forth on that. In order to get it properly surveyed, that's the only way the planning department, the engineering department are going to find out where things truly list. So, you know.
Yeah, but I think that the planning department has an idea, right? This is what we'd like to see on the street.
Again,
No money's been spent. Have a meeting and say, this is what we are planning. We'd like to do this. What, as citizens of the town, do you think
Mr.
about
Forrest, this Peninsula Road has been on the radar for over 5 or 6 years, and there has been money. I think we've already spent. I publicly have spoken about that before. We spent $250,000 on planning in order to get us to the stage. And I know most of you have not paid attention to a lot of things that we've been doing. There's been no secret of the fact that Peninsula Road needs some general upgrades, and that's what we're trying to make it. So there's intersections that are lined up that the public, when they're parking in front of their stores, even for some of them, that they're going to be able to have safe passage. And so this council, which has been elected by yourself, has made decisions in order to make sure that our strategic plan and part of the downtown core was in there, and including the Peninsula Road. So, as I've always said, we're here to work with you guys, but nothing that's gone on here has been like underhandedness, slying before Christmas break.
I'm not saying that. I don't.
Well, that's what I'm hearing. Because
I know. Well, you're inferring that. I mean, you're
making it
interpreting
sound
that
like
way, and that's not what I'm meaning. I'm just meaning that there should be like public meetings. I mean, look, there's only a handful of people here.
Which is
really.
wonderful. I compliment there's people here, and it's
I do
wonderful.
too,
We
but I
have
mean,
been trying to
We
keep.
should have like many people here from all parts to have input before hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent on a particular project. Give the ideas before 10 cents is spent. Say, this is what we'd like to do, and then see what the people say. If they agree with it, fine. If they don't, then don't say, well, we've already spent $140,000 on this, so, we sort of got to go ahead, or we lose the grant money. Anyway, I knew you wouldn't want to hear what I had to say.
No, I love hearing what you have to say. I'm not worried
it's
about
a good discussion, and I just want to, when we get to 10.3, I think it would be very good for staff to talk a little bit about process, and we need all these questions and feedback, and we love having you guys here. But I think also, if I was on that side and not here, there's a lot of things I wouldn't understand, or in how process works and grants work and the timing of everything. And I think that's really important for staff to let everyone know what the timing and how the timing affects everything as well, right? So let's talk. We could talk about that when we get to 10.3. Yeah.
And I can't wait to have coffee at your next meeting that you guys are having. Honestly, it's important for you to hear that.
And there's a lunch with the mayor coming up too.
Yeah, there is one of those too, for sure.
And I just want to say that the one thing that came to me while you were up there is that we don't say, okay, we can't hear any information now after this meeting. That's not our choice to not hear more information. That's actually governance. That's actually, we have to follow that.
It's
That's,
after a public hearing or something,
yeah.
for sure. This is
So
not-
we're not saying, okay, well, this date happened, so now we can't hear anymore. We're not because we don't want to hear what you have to say, but because that's the way that government works.
Thank you for your comments, Bruce. Okay, any other input that isn't on the agenda that we can dive into for your questions? Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's have a run. It is.
Win Avenue, 926 Peninsula Road. I just have a question because years ago, we used to have what they call town hall meetings. And those meetings were amazing because the district would put on the screen what they had, and it was a time for everybody in the community to come and to discuss. And the planner would be there, and he would explain the project, and then everybody that had a question would go up to the mic and we'd ask question. And at the end of this, everybody was happy to have had a voice and to have had a good explanation about what's happening. But those meetings, they didn't come when things were decided. They came before things were decided in the planning. And I thought that it was a really good process. And there was another thing I wanted to say, and I forgot now. But I think we should go back to that. I think it's sad that it disappeared because I remember attending those meetings, not that I went to speak, but I remember like having a way better understanding after the meeting what this, whatever process, whatever project was going on, how it was being planned and what was being done. So I think town hall meetings are very good because people can interact. In these meetings as of today we get to ask some questions, but sometimes we don't at all. And I think we're missing a point there. Anyway, I had something else, but I forgot what it was. Thank you.
No, I think it just represents as well as the public health orders that we've been under the last couple of years, and and for us, we've been trying to keep certain things moving forward. So this is very evident where people feel a little bit disconnected with this group. So so thank you for those comments. Okay. What's that? That's all we can do, my friend. So is there anybody attending via Zoom? Please raise your hand icon to speak, and if you're attending by telephone, hit *9. Just before we get into delegation, Marcy, we're just going to make sure there's nobody that would like to speak by telephone.
There is nobody with their hands raised on, excuse me. Mr. Glenn Kasmar has his hand raised.
If that's regarding your application, then we'll be getting to that a little bit later on.
Should I? Hi, Mr. Kasmar, can you hear us? You may have a bad connection there. It's a little bit hard to hear you, Mr. Kasmar.
Sorry, but I'm sure the connection is unstable where I am. I apologize.
No problem. This is our general input or public input section. If there's anything you would like to ask, or if it's anything regarding your application.
No, I'm good. I'm just wanted to join the meeting.
Okay.
There's nobody else on Zoom.
Thank you. And have we received any additional emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
We have received one email, but it is in regards to an item that's coming up later in the agenda, where there's going to be some room for public input. If it's all right, I'll read it out then.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, delegations. Welcome, Miss DeWitt. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me here this afternoon.
The floor is all yours.
Excellent. So I'm just going to share my screen. I have a presentation to try to summarize for you the entirety of the 63-page report that we've prepared in the last couple of years. So again, thank you for having me. For those of you that aren't aware, I'm Marcy DeWitt. I'm the coordinator for the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network and have been a resident of Ucluelet for 13 years. So always happy to come to council to present some of these fun projects I have the privilege to work on. So the Building Prosperity in the Alberni-Clayoquot is a report that was prepared by the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network through a grant from UBCM in order to prepare poverty reduction action plans. So a number of poverty reduction action plans throughout BC were funded in order to anywhere from 25,000 plus in order to engage communities and prepare these plans on behalf of both regional districts and local municipalities. So as I mentioned in the delegation, I'm going to attempt in my 10 minutes to summarize the 63-page report. I want to walk through the highlights and then just really point out some of the key sections of the report. The intentions of this report are very much to ensure that data and recommendations are centralized into one document. So making sure that our local decision makers and leadership have opportunity and access to that information in one location, as well as to assist in focusing advocacy and future action for leadership. There is also kind of that intent to initiate some regional action because we are stronger as a region when we're speaking to some of these large complex issues such as poverty. And then lastly, also to hold up the work that's already being done. We are certainly by no means at the health network experts in some of this work, and we're certainly by no means the organization or the group that's leading this work, but we are able to support and hold up some of the work that is being done. Before I delve directly into the report, I just wanted to summarize some of the work that has been done through the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network in the past few years. So it's now been 7 years. We started this work in 2015, hosting a meeting with the MLA's office. It was Scott Fraser at that point, in order to gather community feedback around poverty and poverty reduction in our region. We moved forward from there to do a variety of different community consultations, participating in the provincial consultation as well, working with local leadership to develop and sign a poverty reduction protocol. So that was signed with our MLAs, MP, all of our local municipalities, as well as the Toquot Nation. So the Building Prosperity Action Plan is really intended to focus our action, to identify where we need to focus action, and to really pull out some of those key data points that we need to be focusing on. So within our work, developing this plan, we did identify some key populations, those being youth and young families, single parent families, any individual in our region earning below the living wage, and then populations which are experiencing higher levels of stigma and racism. I'm going to detail a little bit for you about our consultation processes and then the research that went into this plan. So through the grant that we received through UBCM, we were able to do a variety of different community engagement activities. We conducted an online survey, we did focus groups, as well as interviews with people with lived experience. As we received this grant right in the midst of spring 2020, our plans for community engagement had to shift significantly due to COVID. So we worked with local nonprofits and service organizations who were still providing one-on-one community engagement in order to conduct a lot of those interviews. And so we had individuals with lived experience being interviewed by frontline organizations, as well as frontline organizations providing technological access for individuals who might not have been able to answer the online survey, and that was something that might have been more comfortable for them. In addition to this, we had data from the 2018 consultation for the provincial Poverty Reduction Action Plan, and that information was also collected for our region and pulled together within this project. That information assisted in informing our survey questions and kind of focus areas for the reports, as well as ensuring that we had just that extra voice and extra ability to validate what had been said, and then ensure that that was still the case moving forward as we prepared this plan. In addition to community engagement and focus groups in which we presented the information back to local stakeholders, we were able to pull together a variety of different research articles and pieces from peer-reviewed papers, as well as our population statistics and health authority data to inform this report. So as we sifted through all of that information, we realized that we needed to take a couple lenses in order to make this make sense. So we incorporated 3 different lenses in order to communicate this in a way both to the public as well as to the leadership in a way that would make sense. So the first is looking at action, and we have 2 main areas of focus. And that is within the recommendations and within the information that we were conveying, we wanted to look at ways that we can build and enhance protective factors. So ways to keep people out of poverty and prospering within their lives. The other piece was creating clear pathways out of poverty. So really looking at systemic changes that need to be advocated for in order to assist people in building out of poverty. The next piece was looking at equity and how do we increase access? How do we ensure ongoing engagement? And how do we ensure that individuals are being engaged in a way that is meaningful? So we were looking at 4 different aspects of equity, and those are incorporated within each one of the recommendations, and then also focused on heavily during our kind of building equity area of the report. So procedural equity, inclusion and representation in the process, distributional equity, so their access and ensuring that those with highest unmet needs are focused on. And then also looking at structural equity, acknowledging cultural, historical, and institutional dynamics, which is really important when we're looking at poverty and poverty reduction, especially because of the systems of support that we have in place through our provincial and federal governments. And then also transgenerational equity, which might be a new one for many people, but it's considering the impact of our actions or the failure to act on our future generations, which I think is timely in our communities when we're looking at housing and some of these big ticket issues that are compounding our community issues. Lastly, we have our evaluative lens. So acknowledging that many of these components that make up this report will have their own indicators and ability to monitor progress. We did want to make sure that there was an overall plan, uniting kind of monitoring ability for the overall plan. And so we pulled in the Sustainable Development Goals. And so those are outlined in each one of the plan sections as they're already utilized by our community foundations in the Alberni Valley and Clayoquot Biosphere Trust, and are already recognized as a familiar framework to evaluate some of this work. So this plan is a regional plan. I want to acknowledge the amount of diversity that exists within our communities, within the Alberni Clayoquot. We didn't get into a lot of the depth that we might get into if it was an individual community plan. And just wanted to acknowledge each community is different. These are high-level recommendations in order for our communities to move forward collectively and to also speak with a common voice on some of our bigger ticket issues. We did pull out a little bit of sub-regional diversity and sub-regional achievements within the plan, but really tried to keep the recommendations to a more regional scope. Getting into the 4 areas of the recommendations, income was obviously one of the primary recommendation areas. And those are summarized in pages 31 to 47. What you'll see within the income recommendations is a heavy emphasis on advocacy items for systemic reforms. So looking at ways to assist people out of poverty. And those are very much based on recommendations from the Guaranteed Basic Income Panel findings, which is a great resource that was commissioned by the provincial government around the Guaranteed Income pilot, and actually came out not necessarily in favor of a Guaranteed Basic Income Panel or income pilot, but in favor of mass reforms to our system of supports. Advocating for a living wage was another big piece. So looking at not just minimum wage, but living wage in communities and ways that we can assist in promoting that concept. And then the rest of the concepts really looked at supportive factors. So acknowledging that childcare, education, and then access to basic needs and food are very monumental components of keeping money in the pockets of our local families and local community members who need that, who need those funds the most. Housing recommendations, really a big part of this was holding up the work that local municipalities are now doing to ensure that needs assessments are being done, and we have that ability to look at our individual communities' needs and plan forward. There's also a need to advocate for the creation of a national housing strategy and to really look at some of those systemic advocacy pieces that we can work with the province and federal governments around to make a dent in what's going on in the housing market at this time. Again, this is not something that we're necessarily experts at, but there are some very concise recommendations that we can make to assist local governments in focusing their advocacy efforts and focusing their activities in order to increase prosperity in their communities. Similarly, health, mental health, and addictions, those recommendations are summarized on page 48 to 53. Really looking at supporting some of the wonderful work that is already being done in communities. And a lot of that is around person-centered care. So looking at advocating for services in community, which I know this council has really promoted through health centers and looking at those kinds of options. And then also working closely with the divisions of family practice and harm reduction tables to look at ways that we can increase services in our communities to those that need them most. And lastly, building equity. Now, this was one of the pieces in our community engagement that we heard most about. So individuals that were experiencing poverty, I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback was around the ability to experience dignity and experience and access services without stigma. So this was a big piece that came up regularly in feedback from 2015, our first consultations, all the way till now, when we completed our community engagement in 2021. So recommendations that are specific to this are on page 53 to 56. As well, the equity components, as I mentioned, are built into the recommendations for each one of our recommendation areas and categories. There are a variety of different engagement kind of areas, but I'll kind of let you delve into that a little bit on your own without getting into the specifics of the exact recommendations. Our next steps on this, the ACHN will be presenting this plan to all of our local leadership tables, looking for motions to adopt in the near future, as well as just an ability to work on furthering these steps and furthering this work in our communities. Also looking at a potential creation of a poverty reduction table, whose sole purpose is to really start looking at the education and stigma reduction, and uniting some of these components for regional voice. So supporting local leaders in briefing notes and different opportunities where appropriate to develop more granular action plans and or advocacy pieces regionally. So I'll stop there. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for that presentation and the thorough report. Are there any questions for Ms. Hewitt? Councillor Cole?
I'm just going to comment and thank you, Marcy, as always. And I have the honor and pleasure of having a seat at the table of partners through the ACRD for the HCHN. So I appreciate the presentation. Well done. And whether it was 10 minutes or not, doesn't matter. You did a great job. Thanks, Marcy.
Yeah, just a big thank you. I think these kind of reports really help us build our case for the need for these kind of subject matters you're talking about. So thank you. Okay. Have a good afternoon, Marcy. Well, Mr. McLean, is there any unfinished business for anyone? No. Okay. Into bylaws. Moving to 9.1, zoning amendment application, Pacific Rim Charters and Guest Lodge, 354 Forbes Road. Welcome, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. I'll just give a brief bit of background and overview of the bylaw and the recommendations you have in front of you in this report. I will just try to share my screen, if I may. Okay, so this is 354 Forbes Road, the Pacific Rim Charters and Guest Lodge. A little bit of background, and I won't go into all the appendices in the past reports, but Council may recall that Council gave third reading to a zoning amendment bylaw, which is bylaw number 1248. That was 3 years ago, and there were some conditions that Council had set that the applicant needed to meet before the bylaw would be considered for adoption. And those conditions included basically pulling a building permit to do some renovations on the building to basically fix a number of items that had been done in the past without permits and the proper overview to make sure that it met the minimum health and safety standards of the BC Building Code. And so in the subsequent time that has passed, the owners have done significant work on the building and have recently received a provisional occupancy of the building, having met those minimum standards of the code. There are a couple of conditions. It's provisional because there's a couple of conditions that need to be met for it to become sort of permanent. But certainly they have met. Those were one of the major hurdles, if you will, was to bring the building up to code for the intended use before council would consider adopting the zoning to allow the guest accommodation in the building. So essentially, they've proven that the building can be safe for guests. There one other question or condition that had been sort of put out there was registration of a restrictive covenant that would guarantee some of the things that were promised, particularly around provision of some staff housing on the lower level. And that has been a bit of a hurdle for the owners. They have essentially indicated that they're a bit stuck, that their bank won't agree to registering it on title and priority. So they have approached staff and we had a conversation. They asked if we could approach the zoning in a slightly different way to achieve the same or almost the same thing as the covenant would have. And so the zoning bylaw that's in front of you, which is a new amendment, essentially this option here would be to abandon that old zoning bylaw from 3 years ago and go down this road, which would amend to allow the use as accessory uses, but would have some very site-specific definitions, and I'll just describe that to essentially define the uses and accessory uses much in the way the covenant would have guaranteed. So the bylaw 1303, if it were adopted, would change the principal uses of the property to allow the recreation services, specifically marine-related guiding tours or charters, and that's the main purpose of the Pacific Rim charters and the use that the property has been put to, and that is legal today. Light industry, because this is the Forbes Road light industrial area, and staff housing as a principal use, so that would be permitted. Accessory uses would be the single-family residential use, which exists on the property, but also the commercial tourist accommodation would be an accessory use, and it's defined as be permitted on the second and third levels of a mixed-use building on the area of the land shaded in black on the site plan below, so long as marine-related recreation services is active to the principal use of the property. So instead of a covenant saying you will only use this as guest accommodation if you're still operating your guide business, essentially the zoning is trying to set the same thing up. So the accommodation would be an accessory use to the guiding business still being there. Because one of the considerations was it wasn't just a rezoning to a motel in what is otherwise a light industrial area. It's really that tying of uses that is kind of unique to this operation. The other accessory use it speaks to in the and this is on page 90 of your agenda. So this is within the bylaw itself. It would put a limitation on the ground floor use of the rear of the property. And there's a little map of it, essentially stating that the ground floor area shaded in black on the site plan may only be used for the staff housing or left vacant. So it's very likely that over time would be where the staff housing would be built. It wouldn't. The one difference with the covenant is the covenant would have had a timeline for which they had proposed originally for providing the staff accommodation. In this case, they would have the option of providing the staff accommodation, but the zoning wouldn't hold them or a future owner to that timeline. So that is this new zoning bylaw, which we have prepared as requested by the applicants. So that's one avenue, and so that the recommendation, you'll note that there isn't a staff recommendation recommending one over the other. We wrestled with this a little bit because council had indicated in the past that these are the conditions we want to see met before we adopt this zoning, and we really didn't want to recommend contrary to that. But this is as the applicant has asked us to explore. This is an avenue that I'd say, does it achieve exactly the same thing as it would have previously with the covenant being registered? No, it doesn't have the same sort of timeline for providing that staff housing. I think there's a high likelihood the staff housing would happen, but there isn't that same guarantee, and it wouldn't be registered on title to transfer to a future owner. So really the zoning would sort of set the stage for it, but not compel it to happen. And then the other piece that we mentioned is there's one of the things that came out of the code review, and I've got my cursor, I'll just highlight, I'll move it there a bit. That blue line on the site plan there, that's the line between two neighboring parcels. So the building is on one lot and there's a vacant lot owned by the same owners next door. It's necessary, and you can just maybe see on the screen, there is a fire access lane that's required for and sort of runs along the edge of the property around to the back there. So it's hatched, but it's kind of kind of light on the screen there. That also ideally would be registered as an easement over the neighboring property to guarantee access to the building for fire access purposes. That's a code requirement. So as long as the lands are both owned by the same owner, that's an easy thing to meet. If they were to transfer that, that becomes problematic, and that may put any business license in jeopardy. And really that ideally, again, you'd register that on title, and then it's solved. And if someone were looking at purchasing the property, it wouldn't be a surprise that they need to provide that. In this case, as I said, the applicants have indicated that is somewhat problematic. And so what we've suggested is maybe a compromise is to, if council goes forward and were to adopt the zoning to allow the use, that there be a condition on the business license that would essentially say the business license is good for a year, but no renewal until that easement is registered. It gives them a year to sort that out and to make sure that the easement is on title. And essentially buys some time to iron out that last condition to remove it from being a provisional occupancy to be more of a long-term one. Maybe I'll just pause and see if there are any questions. I do note that Mr. Kashmar, I believe, is on the Zoom call and should be provided an opportunity to speak if he wishes, but that this is kind of set up for potentially giving first and second reading to the bylaw. It would need to be referred to a public hearing, and we would go through that process. And as I noted as well, there is a housing agreement bylaw that was always part of the package. We would still suggest that that be adopted as part of this whole process. And as I said, the recommendation included that notation about the business license with the fire access. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Any questions for Mr. Gregg? Councillor McEwen?
Thank you. Through the mayor to staff, I can see why the owner is saying that their bank is not willing to agree to have the restrictive covenant put on title. But I'm wondering what the reason for the fire access easement. It says the owners indicate they're not willing or able to register such an easement on the title at this time. What's the reason for that?
It may be a question for the owners. My understanding, and it's really the placement of those charges on title, and the bank can't prohibit them from doing it, but it's a matter of granting them in priority over any other over the bank's charges.
You're not seeing me when I.
Mr. Kashmar?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, excellent. Just for the record, we do have a fire access currently in place that has been approved by Mr. Rick Gids, I believe. And our intentions, of course, is to have this access completed early May. And our intentions are still to finish the guest accommodation sooner than later. I know it was originally going to be a 3-year time frame, but we could really use staff accomm. So our intentions, I think even our local building inspectors aware that we've done a substantial work in the lower area in pre-preparation for staff accommodations, and work is continuing to be in progress. So we have no intentions of leaving town. We're going to be there for a minimum another 5 to 10 years, as long as our health holds out, and we'll make sure that everything is completed and in order, if that helps answer your question.
Yes, thank you. And I see there is another provision that is under the term landscaping, and that would have been part of that restrictive covenant as well, but is kind of left dangling here. But are you planning on doing landscaping?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we're definitely planning to complete our landscaping. Yeah, been an interesting process, but we're definitely moving forward. No one anticipated COVID and the difficulties and the challenges that we forced or had during that process. So we are moving forward in a positive manner, and looking forward to moving forward.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, thank you, Glenn. I don't see any other questions for you at this time.
Okay, thank you.
As Mr. Gregg says, this is all on us, and I think that personally, they're a bit apprehensive, but I'm supportive of option A, moving this along. You know, our biggest concern in this building was life and having the building be up to a certain code, which we understand that it is. It would be nice to go into a summer and not having bylaw up there trying to figure out what's going on. And I think that with option A, obviously the applicant would still need to apply for a building permit when it came to that next stage in life if they wanted to do something. Is that correct?
Yes, that it's a provisional occupancy that currently the lower part of the building is essentially needs to be left vacant. If they wanted to do tenant improvements or build staff accommodation, that'd be future building permits as well.
And I do like your creativity regarding the condition of the business license, regarding the fire access being on there. So that gives me a little peace of mind that if he doesn't do it, there wouldn't be a business license issued, and then we'd be back to square one, I guess.
My concern is not having a timeline for staff housing. I would go with option B, that I would like to see it remaining unchanged, because I would like to see that staff housing in place first.
Yeah, Councillor Cole?
Through the mayor, I just want to say that I do think in all things not having enough accommodation globally and in this community, far reaching to every corner, that to not be enforcing staff accommodation be part of any build structure, you know, complexity of it all would not be of meeting all the needs that we say we need to.
Councillor McEwen?
We have been dealing with this for many years, and I would like to see it get moved along, so I'd be in favor of option A.
Councillor Hoare, did you want to make any comments?
Want versus need. I heartily agree with Councillor Kempson, Councillor Cole. Staff accom is vital in this town, and we don't have enough accommodation. Businesses can't hire. But I also understand the desire to move something that has been sitting on the table, frustrating everybody for quite some time. Currently sitting on the fence, not sure which side I'm jumping onto.
Okay, that's all good. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Councillor Hoare, for that, and Councillor Kumps and everyone else. But I do firmly believe, just because it's been a long time and don't want to look at it anymore, that's not a sufficient avenue or venue to just make it go away. I think we need to stick what all five of us know here is imperative to the community, and that would be that we need to make sure that all things moving forward include more housing for our staff so that we can function as a community. Thank you.
I guess, perhaps Mr. Kasnick is on here. The reality is there is a timeline, correct me if I'm wrong, of him having 6 additional staff housing units on the land by May 1st, 2024, correct?
Through the mayor, that is what they had proposed. It was the original timeline that was in the covenant. They have signed the covenant. The district has signed the covenant. It's not registered on title. So that was their intent. The zoning, as it was drafted in that option A, the new zoning bylaw, would allow for staff accommodation, but wouldn't have a timeline, that they're held to if that covenant weren't registered. Essentially, that the covenant is it's a contract. It is something that the district could seek to compel them to build that, or seek restitution for it. But that would not transfer if the ownership of the property transferred the same way it would if it were registered on title.
Councillor Kemp?
If you don't have housing, you can't run a proper business. A dead stop. I mean, a perfect example is down the street. That building was built without enough staff housing, BlackRock, and we are not able to reach full occupancy. We can't hire the staff if there's no housing. So I'm sorry, but I totally, I would like to see this remain unchanged.
Councillor McEwen?
I think the covenant was written and signed by both parties before COVID, and COVID has put a 2-year kind of delay on everything. And so I know the applicant wants to build the staff housing, but the timeline really is it's been delayed by 2 years. So it's the option is to provide the staff housing or to leave that space vacant. Is that correct, through the mayor?
That would be what the zoning would say.
Yes. So I just think I would like to see this moved ahead and go to public hearing.
Councillor Cole?
Unfortunately, I want to segue on to the end of Councillor Kemp's, so I can say that also the staffing of your ambulance service in this town completely relies on housing and something that as a corporation in the unit we don't have. And moving forward, if we had another option, it would definitely have to include housing so that we can all function as a community.
And if this business needed housing, it would take up more stock in our non-existent housing market in Ucluelet. So,
Councillor Hoare, did you have your hand there?
I'm with Councillor Cole and Councillor Kemps on this. We can't staff the grocery store without housing.
Yeah, and I just really wanted to just take stock, and hopefully Mr. Kaznek is there, because I'd like to a closing comment from him. The fact is, you're right, as Councillor McEwen, this in particular applicant's been before us for a long time and has had struggles. Some of them are, probably preventable, but the reality is COVID hit that industry very long and unable to, make the commitment of putting the investment into the building in order to honor the covenant. I think that the district is giving a reasonable, I'm not saying, and I don't think Councillor McEwen is saying that housing for staff is not an issue here, but the reality is, with the rezoning of the property, it's very specific what the property can be used for. And what that does is it ensures that there is no undue hardships upon a person that is trying to get the building compliant, which has taken many years. And so for those that are on the fence or not on the fence, I think that we are being protected. It's a creative way in order to ensuring that those 6 units are turned to housing. I think they need it. There's no debate that. We all know that. And it's unfortunate he's not coming here and spending the $1 million downstairs in order to provide it. He simply doesn't have the means to do it. So him acknowledging that, I think it's simply, getting to the next stage. So I'm happy with option A, and I would hope that Mr. Kaznek, are you still on the line?
He is.
I am on the line, but for some reason you can't hear me.
No, we can hear you 5 square at the moment, so you can go ahead and if you want to make a couple closing remarks before I call this to question.
Yes, I would. I just wanted to let council know that we've spent almost $750,000 on a small business changing this building and bringing it up to code, and have done everything in our power to meet every requirement that we can. The original zoning was, once our zoning was finalized, that we would have 3 years to complete the staff accoms. We're okay with that, but keep in mind that we've already spent a couple $100,000 in preparation for the staff accoms, and we're continuing to move forward. We do need to run our business, and we do need to be open. So, option A is really the only option we have to survive. We can agree to something, staff accoms ready. The original agreement was 3 years from when the zoning was finalized. I know it's taken us some time because of financial issues and COVID and some very challenging times, but we did work through it, and we do need to continue to operate, or we won't be able to move forward. And so I really hope that you guys would support option A. I don't mind option A with an amendment. Give us a time frame on the staff accoms or some of the staff accoms. Not all 6 of them have to be completed at once. We plan on moving forward because we need or require staff accoms even for our existing business.
Okay, thank you for those comments.
Does anyone have any questions personally for me?
There may be a question in this comment, but the way I see it, and I'm just, this is a big overlook, and I'm going to take BlackRock out of it because that is a choice people have to come and vacate. But you don't have a choice if you need an ambulance, and you don't have a choice to buy groceries. And so if people are displaced, have a job here, but don't have accommodation here, therefore have to live somewhere else, and then they are occupying a space that perhaps somebody that could keep your ambulance up or keep groceries in your grocery store, then I think we actually need to look at it that on that rudimentary level where it literally is that simple. So I'm wondering, and here's where a question may come in, and this is just words coming out as I'm thinking. You have a certain amount of units and you have a certain amount of spaces that you want to make revenues on. Is it possible to take away from a couple of those revenue spots, create a couple? You just said that you don't need to create all the staff accommodation all at once. Is it possible to create a couple staff accommodations so that a couple of people who may be ambulance employees or maybe co-op workers actually can live in the spaces that those fishing charter guys might be able to then live under your roof? And I don't know if that'll make sense.
We, with our 12 rooms of guest lodge accommodations, we are already putting up other customers because we cannot handle the customer load that we have. But our existing guest lodge rooms are just rooms. There is no cooking facilities. We have no cooking facilities on our property at this time. So none of those rooms could be converted into temporary staff accoms without, we've already spent all this money on architects, engineers, structural, electrical, mechanical to have our guest lodge brought up to a certain code. To change that now, I would rather be on a faster schedule to complete the 6 staff accoms. There's 8,000 square feet of finished building there that will be divided into 6 units to supply some very nice accommodations for, people working in Ucluelet. But you just have to give us a chance. We need to survive. We're doing the best we can. We have brought the building up to a very, very, very difficult code because it was brought up to the 2020 commercial code. It wasn't just fire, life, and safety. The entire building from the ground up had to be changed, and even requiring us to separate buildings as part of the fire code. So I'm not trying to complain or, express, the difficulties that we had to go through, but, I would like you to maybe come to some kind of an agreement to give us a couple years. We've already spent $200,000 in preparation for the 6 units, and yeah, it's, in preparation. It's just that we need to move forward. We'll start working on it again this winter. But, once our season starts, we're basically a 12 to 18 hour a day, 7-day a week affair. So we can't really do construction until the guest lodge is closed, which is usually October 1st through the winter.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments. And any other questions for staff?
Not for me.
I was looking at the counselors here. Thank you, Mr. Glenn. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to.
Just clarifying for myself. So the Casmars signed the agreement. We signed the agreement, but it wasn't registered. So currently everybody's agreed to the agreement other than it hasn't been registered, which means it does not move with the property. So if the Casmars sold the property tomorrow to Joe from wherever, they would know nothing about the agreement regarding like staff accom and that. I'm just.
No, it's a good question. So perhaps Mr. Gray can answer that question with the rezoning, what that would look like or not look like.
Through the mayor, as it is, that if the property sold tomorrow, that covenant would not bind the future owner. If it's registered on title, well, then that changes everything, and a new owner would be, basically taking on the responsibilities under the covenant. So that's where the registration of it is key, as the district often, when we're dealing with covenants or rights of way or whatnot with developments, that having those registered is often something that happens between third reading and adoption of the bylaw. And in this case, there appears to be a hurdle.
But just to piggyback to Councillor Hoare's question is, if there is a rezoning and it specifically says that the use of the land, that doesn't change.
Correct. The zoning that is drafted differently now, that wouldn't rely on the covenant to define some of those areas. So that zoning would be there with a new owner. So the new owner would have a property that would be, if the bylaw 1303 sort of followed along option A, if it were adopted, the new owner would have a property where that lower level could be used for staff accommodation or be vacant. So that sort of sets the area aside as proposed, that they wouldn't be turning that into some other use, but it wouldn't compel that owner to actually build the staff accommodation.
Right. And legally, upon an inspection, it's not like they can store a bunch of boats down there. They can do it. When we say vacant, it's vacant. So you have a choice. Either the building's lower section stays vacant, or you put staff accommodation. Is that correct, Mr. Gregg?
That's correct, and it's the portion that had been sort of committed. If you look at page 90 of the agenda, the zoning bylaw, that 1303, has a couple of maps that define where the areas are, like where the commercial tourist accommodation would be on the upper levels, and where that staff accommodation limitation, if you will, would be on that lower level.
And I agree with wholeheartedly everything you're saying about the covenants and the stuff. It's just about the ability to move the applicant forward in a positive way. And if it were to change hands in 24 months because of whatever reason, there's still a rezoning that would have to come before this table about what the new uses could look like. Hence why staff accommodations were put on the table, because they came for a rezoning, and we made it very clear, all of you, about the fact that they needed staff housing. And I still think that you're doing the same thing regarding the rezoning. It's just not a covenant, because obviously, I've heard the short story from Glenn many times, and it's causing some financial hardships because there's a covenant due to the bank. It's up to him. But again, if there is change of ownership, there's a rezoning, what you can and can't do with that property. For me, that's giving me a sense of comfort knowing that there's two uses, either vacant or they can be staff housing be put down there.
I'm going to stand by. I'm not okay with the option to have a business and be running it and not be held accountable to the staff accommodation, and just to leave it vacant.
And I concur.
No, perfect. So good. So I'm going to, which one should I call the question first? I'll you know what? I'll do option A first. I'll call that one to question. So all in favor option A, raise your hand. Okay. Opposed? Perfect. And those in favor of option B, please raise your hand. Opposed? Excellent. So option B is the direction we're gone, and I think there is a suggested motion. If someone would like to move that, please.
I got it here.
Page 88.
To move the council direct staff to advise the applicant to arrange for the registration of the section 219 restrictive covenant and access easement on the title of the property at 354 Forbes Road, and defer further consideration of amending the zoning designation of the property until such time as the conditions stated by council in October 2018 are met.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Well, that was a good conversation, you guys. Okay. And
Glad you're here. Any light stuff coming up?
no, it's a heavy one. We just started. It's gonna be like a 2 washroom break evening. Okay, we're still good. Okay, moving on to 9.2, development variance permit and covenant modification, 848 Marine Drive. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'll just give a brief overview, and then perhaps this is a development variance permit, so it would be appropriate to invite the applicant to address council and also provide an opportunity for public input. And I believe we have the one piece of correspondence that has been sent in as well. So briefly, for 848 Marine Drive, this is a setback variance request and a parallel amendment of the covenant on the title. The image that's in your that is in the staff report that's on the screen now is showing the contour map of the property, that it has a steep slope towards the rear, that they are planning to build a house on the property, and that the geotech has said to stay 5 meters back from the edge of that slope. I'll just change the... And in the air photo, essentially the level area is the area that, this is an older air photo. This is around 2008. This was taken where the lot sort of building site was cleared by the previous owner. And since it has grown up along the pathway, along the front edge of the property. That gives an indication of its location. And so I just wanted to highlight so this site map that's on the screen now, the top of slope is indicated here, and the geotech engineer has said to keep construction back from that. So they've outlined in purple what would essentially be the proposed building area on their site, and that this area where I've got the cursor hovered is really where the variance would apply. They're proposing, instead of having a 15-meter setback, that be reduced to a 10-meter setback in that portion. And I just also wanted to highlight that in their letter, we don't have building plans to share with you, but they're describing that their proposal is to build this house in phases, that the initial phase, it would be within this area, sort of to the left of the blue line that's shown there, that would be a single-story building. So the area that's where it's being requested to have the lesser setback, the 10-meter setback, would be the single-story portion of the building. They do intend to do an addition one day to have a two-story portion that would be, I'm not sure what I did with the screen there. There we are. That over on the other portion where they would intended to do an addition that could be 2 stories, that would meet the full setback. So if that factors into council's consideration, that's something that that clarification, could be actually written into the condition of the development variance permit. I'll just see if there's any questions from council, and then it would be appropriate to see if the applicant, I'm not sure if they're here or if they're online, if they wish to address council, or if anyone from the public wish to make representation to council. This is an opportunity for them to be heard as well, since we've completed the notification, and really it's now here for council's consideration.
Yeah. So are there any councillors have any questions or comments? Councillor Cole, come on, you got something. I actually, I'll save my comments for afterwards, but does the applicant happen to be on?
Mr. Gregg, could I double check the applicant's name, please?
I'm going to mispronounce it.
Does it start with a T?
It's Whitney, I believe it's Tuserkani.
Good afternoon, Miss Tuserkani. Can you hear us?
Hi, yes. I just recently got married, so my last name is a lot easier to pronounce now. It's still... Yes, so plans have evolved a bit since the original application, because it was 6 months ago that I submitted. The lot is zoned for up to 10 nightly rentals. I'm not planning on getting anywhere near to that, but preliminary plans were for 4 cabins to be down below, because it is a 2-tiered slope. So we're looking at the top part of the land right now, and off to the right of the driveway there's actually been an excavation done through an excavation permit to put in a driveway that goes down off of the map. You can't actually see it there, but because of the fact that there's a row of trees down below that I don't want to touch, plans are now to put one of those cabins up top and to not build any suites at this time. So it would just be 4 cabins, and I would be living in the cabin up top originally and renting out those 3 cabins below, and then 5-10 years down the line building a primary dwelling. And the plans that I have with the builder right now for the cabins if you look at that southwest corner, so the purple and the blue highlighted area, about half of that area is the size of the cabin, and it sticks out just past that setback line, just about 2 meters out. So I'm not planning to go anywhere near the 5 meters, but I did want to give that buffer just in case plans were to change when the actual plans are on paper. And then the main house eventually, I'm saying 5 to 10 years from now, would also be within that 5 meter additional offset, but most likely not anywhere near it. But I know that the zoning requires that your main house is in front of, or the front face of it is in front of the cabin. So that's kind of where that offset is. I might be able to speed the cabin pretty close to that, the lot line as is now, but it all depends on the geotechnical report. But plans are to keep it as close to that cliff face as possible.
Through the mayor to Mr. Gregg, this is a super simple question. Is the precedence, and because I just can't think of them at the moment, is it normal that you're going to build a cabin, and I get that lots of times you build a cabin while you're living in there while you build your house, but to build a cabin and then build a bunch of other rentals without building your primary residence, is that a typical scenario?
Through the mayor, the property does have zoning that allows for the guest house use, and the guest house use itself is defined as either being like, it could be the main house with up to 6 guest rooms within it, and on large enough properties up to 4 guest cabins. Now, it doesn't say you have to have guest rooms before you have guest cabins. So, potentially, and forgive me, I'm looking at this off the top of my head, but essentially it would be defining one of, if you built 4 small cabins, one of them being defined as that's the primary residence, where the sort of the owner and the person overseeing what would be 3 guest cabins, that would be potential. They're all built to code. They're all houses, if you will, just of typically a smaller size than the main house. So that for the time being, they could potentially have 1 small house and 3 guest cabins, and then later build a different main house and convert what was their main house into the 4th guest cabin. I think that's what they're proposing, if I understood it correctly.
Yes, that's correct. And I have talked to John Toogood about this as far as whether or not it's going to be allowed in the future. And each cabin is only 500 square feet. So it will be a small guest cabin or guest house in the beginning. That is considered my primary dwelling. And then when I go to build the main house, I would ask for that to be changed to the primary dwelling, and then to have the cabin be the guest house at that time.
I have a quick comment. Marine Drive has had a lot of building, and there's been a lot of challenges for a lot of those people, and there's some active right now. We've never had, and to my knowledge, have someone come for a variance because they want to get their cabins or their houses closer to Marine Drive. I don't think that, for me, it's an appropriate request when, I hear that we're going to put our house on the main drive a little bit closer to Marine Drive, but we're still able to put cabins down below on the bank. So, we're not, there's a big piece of property there. It's buildable. It's very prominent in the neighborhood, and I go back and forth here, but I'm not I would not be supportive of an application, especially when I don't see house plans, what that looks like. I don't know if that's a 28-foot building I'm looking at, and I can't stress enough. All the other applicants that have been on Marine Drive, including Sonomoka, have all adhered to our variances and have overcome a massive amount of blasting and to push back in order to respect the setbacks. And quite frankly, whoever built that lot at the beginning kind of nuked it by removing that vegetation on the front, which is the only lot on there. And the applicant probably is not the person that did that, but we need to be mindful that in itself doesn't blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. So I'm going to go back and forth, but I know that I wouldn't be supporting this variance.
Sorry to interrupt, just through the mayor. I just want to remind that this is being a development variance permit. We have given notice, and this would be an opportunity to take public input as well before we get
That
too
was-
far on making a
Thank you for keeping me on
decision
track
on this.
there.
And I believe we had an item of correspondence as well.
If you would like to read out any comments from public, would be great.
Certainly.
Yeah, just want to read out a letter. No, that's all good. Just stand up there with your name and address, and perhaps it is yours.
My name is Patrick Lane, and I live in 847 Marine Drive. And so my comments were much like the mayor's. We all bought into Ocean West and the development because we liked the setbacks. And at, as you say, considerable cost and frustration, most of us have lived within those setbacks. And I can understand the applicant's frustration at the geotech report's not coming in what she'd like at, but we would like her to comply with the setbacks.
Well, that was very timely, so thank you for supporting my lens on that. Are there any other comments from the public?
The applicant has her hand raised.
Okay, yeah, off to the...
Hi, I just wanted to kind of reiterate the only reason I asked for that additional setback was because of the geotechnical report, but the geotech did say that depending on when the build starts, we may be able to build closer than expected. And the only reason I have asked for that additional setback, which in reality will probably only be a meter into the setback, at 2 maximum, is because the cabins down below are all carbon copies of each other. And so the builder wants to build the same cabins. And so the footprint of the cabin may or may not fit within that setback, but if it does, I'm absolutely, either way, depending on what you decide, of course, willing to build within the setback. And as far as nuking the lot, I absolutely did not do that. And the whole reason that 4th cabin is going to be at the top rather than down below is because I don't want to take down a single tree. And I'm going to be planting more trees along the road and onto the side between the southwest corner and the other lot as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for those closing comments. Are there any other additional comments from the public? Oh, bonus round. Go ahead.
This is not about that, but I was looking at it, and there's no showing, it doesn't show on the drawing, but the current access road to the front goes right through the setback. So, and that's not shown on the drawing, and I don't know the city guy. And I didn't know that you could actually punch a road through the setback to get access to the front. And I know that some of our other neighbors have had big trouble for punching roads through the setback.
I have no idea what that means, but Mr. Gregg, we're diving into subjects deep today here. It's good. We should go back to our 2 o'clock starting times, I think. Mr. Gregg, if you would like to make a comment about that.
Just trying to share the screen here again. So as you'll see on the site plan here, the driveway is indicated.
It's here.
Excuse me. The driveway that's indicated on the survey here that was put in originally. Yes, that the setbacks are building setbacks. First of all, there is also a covenant that restricts what can be built within those areas. And I believe the one exception is driveways. It is a green space covenant, but essentially, particularly with what's being asked to be varied here is the front setback. That front setback is defined as sort of keeping the buildings back, but in order to have an access of vehicle access from the road, the driveway has to come through that setback at some point.
Okay, thank you for the clarity, Mr. Gregg. No.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the applicant said that they're putting a second driveway in to access the lower cabins. So that would be 2 driveways through the setback.
Through the mayor. That's what I heard as well. And I'm not certain if they're still on the line and can describe better whether that is teeing off that one entrance or whether it's a second entrance. But the buildings, the setback, the variance request is for the building setback really outlined in purple.
Yeah, the driveway actually extends at a T at that intersection, that little joint after you go down the driveway, and then snakes around. That's already been approved by the district, and excavation has already happened. It's a T off of the driveway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Gregg? And I think I've asked the public. Okay then. What would council would like to do? We have option A or B here. Yeah.
I just a comment. I'm not saying A or B. I feel strongly about somebody building their home, and I get that they're 700 square feet or whatever. I lived in a 700 square foot apartment. It was my home. That was in Richmond, another lifetime. But I feel very strongly about somebody making their home, building a life in Euclid, and building their business. Something about building a business first before you are setting your roots, and this is a philosophical thing. This isn't about what's happening here, but something about the disconnect about I can build this many rental units and I'm going to build one and live in it while I build the others, but I still haven't built my own home in the community yet. And again, this is just a philosophical thing, and I'm just saying it out loud, and that's all I have.
Well, thank you for saying it out loud. I stand firm on the building it within the setback allowed, not to get more cabins in the back here. We're not talking about that there is going to be 5 more long-term rentals here. We're talking about this, although that she's permitted to do it. So anyways, if you don't mind, I will move that council reject or modify DVP 21-03.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Oh man. We're going to get into a lone water one. Do you mind if we make a move to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll go round 2? Okay. Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Okay. Sorry. So good. We're good? Okay, welcome back, everyone. We'll start with 9.3 loan authorization bylaw number 1304-2022, water system and filtration improvements project. To you, Miss Monteith.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I'd love to give you a report that isn't heavy, but not light at all. So, through the mayor, I just want to spend some time going over this report, as this project has a lot of moving parts financially. So I just would ask that you bear with me for a little bit here. The estimated cost for this project has increased from $9.6 million to potentially $20 million. Either way, we still have a total grant of $7 million to use. On February 22nd, Council directed staff to begin the process for borrowing the required funds for this project. However, there's just a couple things that I need to highlight. Back in 2020, when we just had a figure of $2.6 million to borrow, it wasn't that big of a deal for me to be able to organize that. And then when it got into potentially borrowing $8 million, the yearly payment would have been over $400,000 annually. Now, when we look at the cost of borrowing the full $13 million over a 30-year period, it would exceed $700,000 annually based on a 10-year interest rate of 3.24%. So if we were to add this to our current and pending loans, our yearly debt servicing could exceed $991,000 a year, which is quite high, third in the province if all else stays the same. So what the BC government does is they mitigate the borrowing risk by capping the annual liability serving costs for each municipality. So essentially no more than 25% of our annual revenues. And this is on the province's website. On 2021 information, our yearly limit is $1.4 million. So borrowing the maximum of $13 million could put the district in a position where we are using 67% of our borrowing capacity. So ultimately, borrowing the maximum amount would impede or could impede our future ability to complete projects. So what happens with these big capital projects is we start the process of the loan authorization up to $13 million. Then we go through the whole public process and everything that we need to do there. We send everything off to the province, the municipal inspector, to be approved. And then it goes to an RFP or a tender for design and build. That's the time when we'll actually know what we have to spend, because up until this point, it's been an estimate. That's a milestone for me because we may have some cost savings there or we may not. This is really important because the thing that we want to do is not to borrow the full $13 million. We need to try very hard not to get there. So the other thing is when the construction begins, we start to pull temporary loans, and we pull them directly from the Municipal Finance Authority. If we have to, we can only pay the interest if we choose. Then generally speaking, once the construction is done, we have to lock those temporary loans in within 5 years into a 30-year loan, and that happens through the regional district. So another important point to make is that during that time, we want to do everything we can to pay down the temporary loans, because the ultimate goal is not to borrow the full $13 million. You don't want to, that would be the goal. You don't want to have a 30-year loan at the full $13 million. So how do we do that? So one of the suggestions, of course, to reduce the higher loan is to let me use some of the unrestricted surpluses each year for the next 2 to 3 or more years to assist this. So this relates back to the reserves and surplus draft policy I gave you at the budget meeting on February 24th. And it would allow me to start adding more funds to the water reserve fund. Number 2 is alternative revenue sources. I've kind of talked about this before, but I do feel that we need to start finding alternative ways to create revenue other than taxation. So whether it's parking fees for visitors or speaking with our neighbors who are also using our water system, or somehow redirecting tourism dollars to pay for the services that we're required to provide, we do need to start looking at other revenue sources in earnest, in my opinion. And lastly, since we do know that the district is going to require a very large yearly payment to solve this problem, regardless of the loan amount, we can suggest that we could start collecting extra taxes now in order to meet the payments later on. Those extra taxes would go directly into the water reserve funds. I've suggested 3%, which is only $96,000 spread out over all the property owners. This is just an option. It's a suggested motion on my report. If you'd like, I have updated the tax implication slides. You might remember the examples I provided from the February 24th meeting that are on our website. We do have those available if you'd like to see. If it's a hard no, that's fine. We can move on to questions. I see Ms. Mason has them up on the screen already, but maybe I'll just pause for a minute. Light stuff, I know.
Ms. Monteith, let me know if you want me to advance the slide.
And this is specific with the 3% addition on top of what we've discussed earlier. Is that correct?
Yes, so by way of background, on February 24th, we had our second budget meeting. And this is a set of slides here where I gave examples of what our potential property tax impacts would be for the year. And so I've used the same examples. So these properties that I was using at that budget meeting was using the example of the district here. The average assessed value this year is 43% through BC assessment. So if you're living in a property where your assessed value has gone up 43%, you're very average. So believe it or not. So the first example on that slide is a residential home that we used that day on Pine Street. That particular person, their assessed value went up 25%, not 43%. So they were going to be in a situation where they'd actually pay a little bit less than last year. With an extra 3%, they're still paying less than last year, and so on. So then we moved to a home on Helen, the same one. Their assessed value went up 38.9%. So they're at about $140 with the extra 3%. And the people on Marine, they went up 56%, so they are paying more. I was explaining at that meeting that there was a lot of people that were under 43%, and there was a lot of people that were way over 43%. So it ended up being at 43%, but it wasn't really across the board. There were certain neighborhoods that were certainly higher than others.
Through the mayor to Ms. Monteith. So my house there on Helen, that's...
I wasn't going to say.
That $140 that we presented when we were doing budget was what I took your word for, and that was going to be my increase of taxes over last year based on everything else in our budget that we were planning. At that point in time, were we anticipating the cost that it would accrue us with borrowing this money? Because I kind of thought that happened just afterwards.
At the budget meeting on the 24th, that did not include a suggested 3% tax increase for the loan servicing.
So that amount there is going to be double then?
No. I believe your home on the February 24th meeting was $100. So what it does is it takes that $96,000 is 3%. I put it back in the spreadsheet, and it redistributes it all over all the properties that are here.
So that final column with the increase for all of those units includes what we need to do to make it feasible to start saving some money to pay off this amazing amount of money that we need to spend to have the awesome water that we all deserve.
That's correct. So in your case, you went from $100 to about $140.
Thank you.
There's more slides there if you want to go through
What's the
them.
next one look like? Obviously, the business community is going to be negatively affected, but do you have any business ones? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, so the one on top, Tyee Terrace, they're actually a short-term rental paying residential tax. So their assessed value did go up 84.6%. So they're going to pay more. But what can I say? They're not paying commercial tax; they're paying residential. So I guess they'll have to rent it out a bit more. The one in the middle is a restaurant that we all know and love on Peninsula. The set of slides in February, they were going to pay a little bit less than the previous year. Now they're paying $15 more than last year. So that would be how that 3% distributed. The one on the bottom, their business went up 30%. They're going to they would pay a fair bit more than what they did in previous years. So a lot of the business class was downgraded last year because of the pandemic through BC assessment. So now they're coming back up.
I just have one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the mayor, just more of a statement, and to be very clear that we don't get to choose these numbers, that this is something that is given to us because of BC assessments, and it's not, and those dollars aren't something that we all get to then use for all the projects. And maybe this is just a moment that you could take, Ms. Monteith, to be very, very clear about that to anybody who's listening.
Through the mayor. So the assessed value of your home, we have absolutely nothing to do with. It comes out through BC assessments. Everybody has the opportunity to appeal by a certain date. So we'll receive a revised roll. We've got a completed roll that we received at the end of December, and we'll receive a revised roll April 1st, which is coming up. Sometimes it's to our detriment. Sometimes it's not. We have a considerable amount of growth too, so we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But so council here, your control is what how much tax you want to collect to have a balanced budget, and that's what we talked about on February 24th. So you're correct.
And the part about how we collect a lot of money, or that looks like we're collecting a lot of money, but it's a flow through, that it's not something that we are all, that's not where your money is staying.
These numbers are, this tax here, this is the part that we keep. We also collect taxes on behalf of others like the ACRD and the school and the police, and we have to pay them whether you pay your taxes to us or not. We have to pay the various authorities at that time. This is what we keep, though. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the other comment you made regarding just a reserve fund, an automatic reserve fund, that would be another staff report coming towards us, correct?
Yes, it would. I'd like to bring that, the draft policy I delivered to you on February 24th as an example. I'd like to get that officially to council to be reviewed and adopted, and use that as a mechanism to move funds.
Is there any other questions for Ms. Monteith? Okay, there's a couple of recommendations. If someone would like to move them, please.
I will move that council abandon District of Ucluelet Loan Authorization Bylaw number 1268/2020. Do you want to do these one at a time?
Maybe just because they're important. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
And I will move that council approve option A to give first, second, and third reading of Loan Authorization Bylaw number 1304/2022.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I will move that council direct staff to submit District of Ucluelet Loan Authorization Bylaw number 1304/2022 to the Inspector of Municipalities for approval.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Ms. Monteith. That's welcome to report to the community, and yeah, I think it's going to be great. So I know it's been keeping you up at night, and we do appreciate that.
You're welcome. And I'm assuming you're not going to look at the fourth one. I just wanted to clarify whether you're doing the additional motion or not. That's all.
Sorry, I didn't see that. I will move that council direct staff to revise the District of Ucluelet's 5-year financial plan to include a 3% property tax increase to be placed into the Water Capital Reserve Fund for future debt servicing of the water system and filtration improvements project.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Yes, we wanted to support you in all of those. So, okay, moving on. 10.3 contract authorization for Peninsula Road Safety and Revitalization Project.
I think we might have skipped forward a little bit. We're at 9.
9.4.
Oh, geez, I'm running into 10s. It feels like we've been here for hours. Okay, single use, 9.4 single use item regulation bylaw amendment number 1298, 2022. Ms. Mason.
I almost got off scot-free with that.
No, it's good,
one.
sorry. I'm scribbling too much on my paper here.
Excuse me. On February 22nd, 2022, Council gave first, second, and third readings to the single-use item regulation bylaw amendment to add the use of or to add regulation of plastic utensils. Today it is now before you to consider the adoption of that bylaw. If the bylaw is adopted, the next steps we would take would be to notify the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change strategy of the implementation date, which would be 6 months from today's date. We would then implement a business and community awareness campaign, which we are all ready for. And then make sure that our bylaw enforcement awareness and enforcement, that they're aware of the enforcement beginning 6 months from today. Can I answer any questions?
And if I remember correctly, this makes us number 2.
So, since we last spoke, Councillor Cole,
there have been others.
The District of Tofino has also put forward their amendment, and although it has not yet been reported to the Ministry of Environment, when it does, they would be 2 if it was not done prior to us. So if you would like, I can certainly.
I would like to move that Council approve option A and adopt the single-use item regulation amendment bylaw number 1298, 2022 as presented.
I'll second that, my type A friend.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Nice to see that. Okay, moving on to 10.2, 2022 to 2027 FMA equipment financing loan authorization.
Thank you. Through the mayor, this one's much easier. At the February 24th, 2022 special budget meeting, a revised vehicle fleet slide was presented by staff outlining the suggested purchases for 2022. Along with a new small tractor and car, the district's loader, Kubota tractor, and janitorial truck are in very poor condition. Council passed a motion at the meeting to direct staff to proceed with the equipment loan process. So I'm recommending option A, that council authorize up to $350,000 to be borrowed from the Municipal Finance Authority. The rate on March the 3rd was 0.9%, which is it's pretty cheap to borrow money for these purposes. That's it.
No, it was a clear report, and I think we bounced it around our last budget meeting. So there is a recommendation. If someone would like to move it,
I think it's my turn.
okay.
I'll move that council of the District of Ucluelet authorize up to $350,000 be borrowed under Section 175 of the Community Charter from the Municipal Finance Authority for the purpose of purchasing fleet vehicles and equipment. Do we want them separate?
Not together's good, I think.
And that the loan be repaid within 5 years with no rights to renew.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Monteith.
Thank you.
Moving on to 10.3, contract authorization for Peninsula Road Safety and Revitalization Project. Mr. McIntosh, the other Mr. McIntosh. There's two McIntoshes in the room. I knew you were going to jump. You look good up here.
Thank you. Through the mayor, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This report is about the Peninsula Road Safety and Revitalization Project. Specifically, district staff are asking council to authorize a contract to design and construction manage the project today. The project proposes to enhance pedestrian and traffic safety, as well as improve accessibility and revitalize 1.6 kilometers of Ucluelet's transportation and commercial corridor. This project takes place on the periphery of Peninsula Road. It's about curbs, gutters, sidewalks, bike lanes, and boulevards. And it prepares that corridor for a paving project, which is to immediately precede it, provided by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. So they'll pave immediately after this project is completed, or shortly thereafter. The overall project budget for this is $1.888 million. And the timeline is moving quite quickly. The project has to be completed by March 31st of next year. This project is a key component in our OCP, our long-range planning, and also our strategic plan. Some of the problems that this project aims to solve on Peninsula Road and in the community include sidewalk and bike lanes that are incomplete and missing. They end abruptly. They're disconnected and dangerous. Pathways are immediately adjacent to Peninsula Road and are dangerous for pedestrians and bicyclists. Parking is undefined along Peninsula Road and creates safety concerns. Crosswalks and intersections could use improvements and are currently dangerous. The aesthetics of Ucluelet's main corridor could be improved with this project to be welcoming and more inviting for visitors and residents as well. Lastly, the transportation network that connects Ucluelet to the National Park and other areas, including Tofino, could be completed with this last mile project to complete the transportation network in this upgrade. Some of the challenges that the project is faced with is of course a limited budget, as one grant was awarded. It's an extremely challenging timeline for the grant. Coordinating the project with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure is a challenge. The need to integrate community consultation and engagement into that timeline is a challenge and key component. Balancing trade-offs between the way Peninsula Road was and has functioned since inception and safety and revitalization opportunities are a key trade-off. And of course, the underground utilities are out of the budget for this project. So those are some challenges that the project has to address and solve. A little bit of background. In the initiating phase of the project, staff have so far hired a consultant to prepare a vision and completed an open house in late 2019, quite a while ago now. District staff have hired an engineering firm to design a concept, an output of that open house and that vision. Use that concept to apply for grants. One was awarded, and then completed a request for proposal to design and construction manage that concept. So that brings us to where we are today. District staff have recently completed that request for proposal and received two highly competitive proposals, one from McElhaney Engineering and another from Binney and Associates Engineering. McElhaney Engineering has submitted a proposal which provides the best overall value for the district in terms of team commitment, experience on relevant projects, community engagement, project understanding, methodology, and lastly, price. Today, staff have provided council with three options for consideration for this contract. I'll just prepare a brief summary of the three options and then go into some pros and cons. Option A, staff Council would direct staff to award that $330,000 contract to McElhaney for the design and construction management, which would begin immediately. Design would take place in the spring and summer and lead us into a fall construction schedule to be completed again by March 31st of next year. Along the way, there'd be plenty of community consultation and check-ins with council as we go through preliminary and detailed design. Option B, very similar to option A. Council would direct staff to award that contract to McElhaney, and the design and construction management would begin immediately. Same value. However, Council would reaffirm and identify the highest priority within that project to help us lead the community engagement and focus the design in the right direction. Some suggestions for this that I can provide are, for example, Council would direct staff to focus on designing and building the entire concept. Some elements have been removed because the grant, one grant wasn't achieved. So, for example, Council might direct staff to design and build the whole concept, including large. And I'll leave the rest to Council to identify those highest priorities. Option C is to cancel and defer the project for a later date. To go through some pros and cons of A, B, and C. Option A, McElhaney, the engineering firm, has an excellent reputation. They're one of the oldest engineering firms and most competent in Canada. The firm has already completed the concept and survey for this project. And they've hired a subconsultant with an excellent landscape architect who also brings on really renowned community consultation expertise. Some of the cons to option A, McElhaney's proposal is about 10% higher than the next bidder. However, they are the best value. And in option A, Larch Road isn't currently in that budget. Option B, one of the pros certainly is that Council reaffirms the project priorities for us, and we integrate that into our preliminary design and into our project. Another pro is Council could direct staff to reallocate funds, for example, from the Barclay Community Fund to up the budget and include large or other priorities as directed by Council today. One of the cons to option B is that it has a high opportunity for cost overruns as we start to change the scope. Option C, to defer or cancel that project. One of the pros is that there'd be savings found from not investing in this large safety project. And one of the cons are that an important project for the council would be deferred or canceled, for the community, sorry, would be deferred or canceled. And money from the grant would be forfeited and lost at that point. So the next steps here are to district staff would award the contract to McElhaney if that's the direction chosen, and begin that project schedule. So with that said, I'll leave it to council, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Looking to my right, any questions? Well, you got one.
So we talked about a whole bunch of things when we last met with regards to leaving certain aspects out and, maybe coming back to those in the future and focusing on them later. I just want to know what McElhaney is attacking or what they're leaving out is what we talked about last time.
Through the mayor. So at this point, district staff have received an estimate to design and build that project concept, and it's been determined that Larch Road is out of that budget, that $1.88 million budget. We estimate it would cost about another $300,000 to add that into the project budget.
Councillor Kemps.
Through the mayor to staff. So when you talk about the water and sewer lines and the sewer line being at the end of its life, is it that for the whole length of Peninsula that we'd have to upgrade the sewer line to?
Through the mayor. No is the most immediate answer. There's areas that are of high, medium, and low priority on all of the utility lines from that 1.5 kilometer corridor. To replace all of the utilities, water, sewer, storm, is estimated to be about $13 million and about $300,000 to design. That isn't in our current budget at this point in time. One of the benefits of the McElhaney experience and proposal is that they've signaled an openness and an awareness that we have key areas of utilities that are damaged and need attention. Although it's out of the budget, we will be considering them, not necessarily for replacement, but for real consideration. So, for example, some areas might come out of the contingency, or they might be earmarked in the design phase for just a real concerted effort to pay attention to them as we go forward.
Through the mayor to staff. Hi, James. Is there a way to take Peninsula Road, the 1.5K, and take it in chunks and redo the whole, because you have to do underneath first, the water and sewer lines, before you put a nice pavement over it. Is there some way to just do that but still be able to use that grant money?
Through the mayor, no.
Well, that's no fun.
The reason being, and I can elaborate, is that these grants that we have today are for safety and revitalization. They're not for underground utilities. You're absolutely right that this project, ideally this project would be designed from top to bottom, underground utilities, subsurface and above ground works, and addressed in sections. So what we're doing today is proceeding with the opportunity that we have to upgrade and do safety and revitalization.
Is gas tax, the gas tax 1.1 million, are you able to use gas tax money for water and sewer upgrades? That's a reach, I'm telling you, but I'm reaching.
Through the mayor, I might deflect that question to CFO Donna Monteith.
Through the mayor, I can just let you know that uses all of the gas tax we have for Peninsula Road. There won't be any more unless we, there won't be any more to use until we get another payment in 2023. We are, however, going to be applying for more grants. So for the Larch Road section, there's another intake that should come out sometime later this year, most likely another, I want to call it the Active Transportation Grant. Thank you. I believe it comes out in May, so we would be able to submit for another application. And just, again, for background, most of the grants we're not able to get until we're shovel ready. So we keep having to hire consultants and engineers to design projects so that we can actually apply for the grants. It's very difficult for small communities to get ahead because we have to spend the money ahead. And I know it's very frustrating for us as well.
Does the grant, would that grant money, because it's for public safety, would you be able to switch it to the Larch Road sidewalk?
Through the mayor? Yes, I've had a conversation with the grant funder within the last couple of days and asked that same question, and they've signaled that there's flexibility to use that grant really how we wish, as long as it meets the project objectives, which is safety and revitalization of that core.
And then you could use the gas tax for the other for the water and sewer for Peninsula, because honestly it starts from the ground up, right? So, and then I don't know. I'm just gonna.
Councillor McEwen.
The actual paving by the ministry is not happening until 2024. So the work along the edges of Peninsula can be done, and then we'd have a little window to look at replacing some of the infrastructure before that paving gets done. Is that correct? Through the mayor?
Through the mayor, That is an excellent observation. There is no window there. That said, I'll be working to close that window. What I like to do is see that the project that we're working and presenting here today is completed and then is really curtailed by that paving project. I recommend that we not leave open gaps and trip hazards and unsightly construction mess, for example, on the corridor. But absolutely looking for council's direction, and we could do that as well. There's an opportunity to apply for grants and work on some utility services in between.
Thank you. Just was hoping that would be an option so that we could get to that infrastructure underneath the road.
And I just want to muddy the waters a little bit more, just to add a wrench into things. Whether I'm driving my little car or the ambulance or our truck or whatever past the liquor store at the Bay and Peninsula intersection, I can tell you right now, I may be going on an emergency call through that area, but it's only a matter of time until the emergency call is at that area, and that I know that Larch needs help. I know that there's a lot of places that need help, but just moving around the world as far as emergency services goes, and what comes to my mind is the next harm to health and humans is going to happen right in that narrowing. Is there a way that to come to some sort of agreement, or is that a possibility to fix certain sections? And I know what we're talking about, fixing underneath first, and I know down the hill from there's things going on with water always coming out and all kinds of things. I hate to give up free money, so I hate to say no to something that it could be utilized on, but also we're looking at $13 million that we're going to borrow to get good water. So I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking that there are some maybe more emergent situations, and I get that it's revitalization, but safety is the key component of that. And I can't think of a more dangerous situation than right out front there. That's my 2 cents.
So is there, you did more of a statement?
Yeah, it's just a statement.
Okay.
To the mayor, to staff, how much is is the quote for the sidewalk on Larch?
Through the mayor, it's so it's a high level estimate at this point, but I believe it's to be about $300,000. Through the mayors. So what district staff is essentially trying to guide council towards is to direct us to design and build the entire concept, including Larch, and increase the budget to add that into the project using Barclay community funds, and then curtail our project with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure's paving project, so that by the end of both of these projects we have a safe, this is called universal design, is how we reference it, safe, pedestrian, traffic-friendly corridor for all to use. And then as we go through the next 5-10 years, we'll continue to work on those utility services and replace them as needed.
Yeah, and it is, I think Mr. Forrest made the thing a cart before the horse, but the reality is there's funds available to us, or like what happened downtown, either you're going to jump on take the opportunity, or you're going to pass it. So we know some of the preliminary plans that have been shared with us. I believe that they'll be well received. And I know what I like in this agreement here, I've got it circled for a couple of those out there. Preliminary public engagement. I understand maybe, since that's one of some people's questions, could you talk about the potential contractor, if successful, their public engagement component?
Mr. Mayor, absolutely. Bear with me. I'm just going to grab a document.
Okay. And while he's doing that, I do believe that Larch Road needs to be in there. You know, I think when we talk about Barclay Community Forest, James isn't just randomly bringing that out. I did talk to him about that this morning, that I know for all of us, the Larch Road and for connection to the senior center and everything else, and a lot of the school activity that go down there towards the new school, you know, weekend and safe passage for a lot of those kids out there. So personally, I feel that the two go well together and what's been presented to us.
Mr. Mayor, so what I have in front of me is the consultant's proposal.
Okay.
And how he scored them was certainly their ability to, well, how they propose engaging the community and then implementing that engagement into this project. And it scored the highest of the two. So I'm just going to read off, there's 7 line items here that the communications consultant is proposing to integrate into this. So just bear with me. Public engagement plan, outreach materials, online questionnaire, engagement meeting materials, engagement materials revisions, community and stakeholder information meetings A and B, in person if possible, Zoom as alternative, community feedback summary brief. So those 7 items will be used to capture the community's needs, wants, and desires and integrate them into this project as we go through this very fast timeline.
Well, I've always been a fan of fast, so it's always good. I think, you know, the whole concept here for me, again, we've been waiting for this. The staff has spent a lot of time into this, so there's lots of effort that's been done, and hearing your 7-point on public engagement for a lot of people in here today, there's questioning, you know, what that component looks like. You know, again, I'm very comfortable with that, what's been presented, that people are going to have the sticky notes. They're going to be able to have their options and words heard, and how that goes. Not just the people in this room, but also the directly affected business community and residents that are having that work done in front of them. So again, that's more than worth the extra 10%, knowing that that's going to check off, because we've had a lot of prime examples of good community engagement. Appetite Point was a great one. Help me out. There's some other ones, but I know there's been some great, you know, I should know a list of them, but you know, that was probably the highlight for me, was how well that engagement went down there. And yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, this is where I feel that I need to make a statement that I feel very strongly about the Barclay Community Forest Funds and us taking, you know, pieces and pieces here and there. I have said all along that I thought it would behoove us to have a fund that will forever give back in the name of the Barclay Community Forest and our history and the land and what our grandparents did here, etc. I feel as though we're whittling away at that won't leave us enough of a chunk for either that investment that will stand the test of time and will always give us something back, that and something that is a bricks and mortar type thing that will have a plaque on it instead of maintenance or upgrades of things that as a community we need to do and grow and isn't really a legacy, which I feel like these funds, because they're not always going to be coming that way. We've been very fortunate. The timing of the blocks and the years and the cost of whatever that we did, we were really lucky to get it, and it's not a source of income that we're going to continue to ever count on. And yeah, that's just my statement.
I appreciate that. Councillor Hoare?
I'm kind of looking for a clarification. So option A is giving the contract to McElhinney, and part of the design, like it's an overall design that they're doing. Would that design include Larch, which would give us the shovel ready for the active transport grant that potentially has an intake in the spring? So even if we don't include Larch by taking Barclay Community Forest Funds, because we all know how I feel about the whole endowment thing with that too. I'm with you right there, Councillor Cole. But we would then have that plan that we could slot into the active transport grant, correct?
Through the mayor, you're seeing that clearly.
Okay. Just stating that in case that got lost.
Yeah, I know. definitely we want to find grants, and staff are keen to see duplication of what's happening on Peninsula Road, and your word in Barclay communities is well heard. And I think it's just, again, it's difficult to run any community and organization if we keep waiting for grants and hoping that someone's going to buy into our story. You have something, Mr. Gregg?
Through the mayor, I just wanted to add, because Mr. McIntosh wasn't here when the last round of grants were put together, and just wanted to share the sort of the history of this. Is that we did apply for 2 grants previously: the Canadian Community Revitalization Fund, which is the one we were successful on for Peninsula Road. The second one which was a provincial active transportation grant. We were not successful. At the time, we were told. And at the time, we had a concept plan. We did not have a shovel-ready project. They had 122 applications, and if you weren't shovel-ready, they just didn't even look at you. And so that was what we were, the feedback we received was, great concept, didn't make the cut. So that's, I think, part of the logic behind this, is that if it moves forward and we get the design done, we're looking and keeping an eye on that next round of that active transportation grant. And hopefully, we'll be successful with the shovel-ready project and not need to tap into any other source of funds. And it illustrates, I think, just in some of the questions earlier and some of the other discussion, how dependent we are on chasing and competing with other communities for these grants to get capital works built. It's a really unique challenge of local governments, and it's never dull. Thank you.
Okay. Well, what's the group like to do here?
I'd move option A. That council approves option A to the mayor and corporate officer to execute a contract between McElhaney and the District of Ucluelet for the design and construction management services of the Peninsula Road Safety and Revitalization Project in the amount of $330,000 plus tax.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for Mr. McIntosh, and we look forward to how that looks, and certainly the community engagement component as well, so it'll be great.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
And 10.4, the next report provided by the Director of Community Planning is regarding YG? So Ucluelet Government Referral Amendments to Zoning and Structures Act and the Official Community Plan. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. Through the mayor, we received a referral from the Ucluelet government. These are proposed amendments that they are making to their Official Community Plan Act, as it's referred to, and their Zoning and Structures Act. They have some amendments they're proposing, and just as when we adopt an OCP, we consider referring it to our neighboring jurisdictions. They have sent this one our way. There are some amendments that they're making, defining what and clarifying what some of the land uses are, and so we have on page 181 of your agenda is a draft letter and response. They have asked for a response by this Friday, so we took the initiative to draft a letter. Really, the 3 points is, first of all, just acknowledging the referral and thanking them for the opportunity to comment, and really respecting that the land use designations are completely within their jurisdiction and their territories. Also, it's a good opportunity to further invite discussion around regional conversations and really cooperation on issues around coordinating the planning of land uses and the infrastructure around that. And that's been something that has been already a discussion. But really, this is, it highlights that it is good to keep continuing those discussions around how is infrastructure being delivered. We're very much intertwined in our communities, and land use and infrastructure goes hand in hand with that. And then the real third point is just noting that in the amendments they're proposing, one change we identified was that there was in the existing OCP, and it had come from the original 2011 treaty signing and transfer of the community watershed. The Mercantile Creek watershed was shown on the OCP map, and the new one seems to be missing that. So we just highlighted that regardless of the land use designations, it's important for all community members to be protecting and that what is a shared community drinking water source within our system. So if there are any questions or amendments that council wishes to make to the letter, or really we're looking for direction on how to to respond to this neighboring jurisdiction. And as I said, they asked for a response by this Friday. So it's the timeliness of this coming forward today.
I would move the recommendation unless there are questions.
Yeah, I think Councillor McEwen had one there. Sorry.
I was just going to say, through the mayor, good catch on Mercantile.
Yeah.
I will move that council direct staff to issue the response to the Equal with That Government request for comment on the proposed amendments to the Equal with That Government Zoning and Structures Act Amendment Act Number 3, the Official Community Plan Act, as presented in the attached letter to staff, report number 22-37.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Perfect. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you.
Okay, 10.5, 2022 grants and aid and in-kind contributions. Ms. Monteith.
Okay, through the mayor, let's do something fun. I have been kicked out of my Zoom meeting, so I'm just having one small... I'm going to be signing back in, Ms. Mason. Leave and join. What I'm going to do is put the Excel spreadsheet onto the screen so you can have a running tally. 1 second. My apologies. It wants me to sign in for March 29th for some reason. Let me try again. I almost made it through a whole meeting without... Oh, there we go. Okay. You're right. We get back up. So while that's signing in, my suggestion is to maybe deal with the grants portion of the program first and the in-kind contributions next. In both instances, we have more asks than we have money. So it's, in some ways it's a good problem to have, some ways not so much. I did have a couple of comments in regards to the grant asks that I can just bring to your attention so that you're able to consider that. It's ready? All right. Click OK, screen share. This one. So I'm struggling a little bit with the West Coast Multiplex request of $5,000 because I'm feeling like it's not really a program. Under council policy, it's supposed to be for a current social service, and I felt like this one might be ineligible. It seemed to me it was a little more research feasibility-ish. Pacific Rim Wellfest, they've asked for $1,500, and I just wanted to note that they are already receiving $13,439 from RMI funds this year. And the Wild Pacific Trail, who we love to bits, are asking for $3,500. They also receive $10,000 through taxation from us each year. So I just point that out for what it's worth. Those three asks total $10,000, which would mean that you would still have to cut another $10,000 or so. Okay, so share. And I've made a supplementary package for you if you want to refer to the application forms, and I'm going to just turn it back over to you, and you can give me a running tally, and we'll see where we land.
I'll just start with the easy ones. So Ms. Monteith just made 3 recommendations. Is everybody supportive of those?
I am, yes.
Okay.
This is hard. This is a hard part. I hate this part.
I could make one suggestion, I guess, is, we might want to consider some of the bigger asks are asking for almost half of the allowable budget. So maybe there's some options to give partial funding if they would still be moving forward or not.
I would like to have a discussion about Surfrider. I would say $200 for Surfrider. I would like to see them more in our community. First.
Surfrider Pacific Rim with an ask of 3,900.
Mm-hmm. We'll put 250 in there for now, and let's see what happens.
Right there.
Thank you.
I have one thing, Ms. Monteith, you might know more about it. The Central West Coast Forest Society hadn't asked through the ACRD, and yeah, but in agreement, I had a conversation, and we decided that they were going to get granted through the ACRD, and if we wanted to do anything on top of that, that was up to us. But let that be known that there was a contribution made through there. You might know more about it than I do.
Okay, so through the mayor, my conversation with Ms. Fong with the ACRD indicated to me that she felt like they were that application was different than what they applied for here through the district. So not seeing the application they made to the ACRD, I don't know that.
To which I agreed that it was different, and so that we went ahead on that end of things and did it, and so that this would be considered what we want to do on a separate playing field.
Okay, thank you.
The BC Association of Surf Instructors. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are, but 250.
Good.
On which? Sorry?
The surf instructors, BC. Care Network, I think it's a bigger conversation about what's going on about the Care Network.
Did you get in touch with Mark about Raincoast Education and School Board? Sorry, I should have my mic on. We had a conversation earlier about Raincoast Education Society and talking to the school board about their.
Yeah, he hasn't contacted me about getting in touch with the school district. Central West Coast.
Keep going there, Councillor Kemps. You're
I
doing
know, I'm
great.
kind of like, ugh.
Do it.
The Raincoast Education Society, I believe there's some conversation that should be had with the school board and that society. But I love the res, but can you just put $1,000 in there for right now and see where it comes out on the wash?
I think we should move the total over also for the Seaview Seniors Housing Society.
Yeah, that's a push. That's
Yeah.
250. Yeah.
That's a push.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just cutting.
No,
I'm not doing any good thing.
You're in your little mood there. It's
I
good.
mean,
It'll go with you.
As well as the Aquarium Society.
Yep.
Yes, yeah.
I'm just taking the easy low hanging, as
So
the mayor
good,
would say.
So good.
Thanks
Food
a lot.
bank?
Thanks a lot, Rochelle.
Where's the ask from the?
Food bank?
The food bank, that's a, isn't that a, it wasn't monetary, was it? Wasn't it a?
Kind,
No.
I think.
Through the
Is it
mayor,
fine?
they're
one
both. They have an in-kind
Both places.
ask.
Oh, they
for,
are.
This is
this
money.
is the monetary because this is their sort of backup funds to get through the rougher times of the year, I believe.
correct.
Hospice Society,
Love
for
the
me, I
hospice,
would like
but-
to keep at full value, just if you don't mind, just for if we're just playing with numbers.
I like that.
And the
It's really important.
Central West Coast. Oh man, where are we at here? In the Care Network, that was to do with the neutering of cats, was it? Was it specific with cats?
Specific to cats, yes.
I thought we just gave him 10 grand for a cat. Someone did, so sorry, I shouldn't say that out loud.
I think the
this one's a given.
USS scholarship is
Yeah.
a
Oh, that's a
pushover.
given, yes.
That's a given. That's a push.
And so those two in the bottom were already answered, so we're working our way up now, right?
Where we are now?
We're going up.
We're going up because the other two are just blank.
Yeah.
The
Back
rest
up.
are just in kind. And as we work our way up, we're at 8,500.
12 grand.
Scroll up
left.
a bit, a little bit.
12
Miss-
grand we have to get rid of? Oh, gosh.
Can you scroll up a little bit for us, Ms. Monteith? There.
Still have 12.
Well,
So the West Coast Forest Society, I would think that we would want to support that, whether it's in that full amount based on what we can do. In their thing, I didn't bring my glasses, maybe somebody else could.
I was just
But
reading it.
Yeah.
But you have to think, though, if the Forest Society has how much? I have to stand up, and that's going to be awkward. No.
I need to scroll up.
Oh, so the Central West Coast Forest Society one was about their network creating their salmon trail
Yep.
project.
So regarding things like the salmon trail and stuff, I feel that societies like that, and we talked about that, is networking with other societies like Tourism Ucluelet, that kind of thing, because
pull
that is
from,
to
sure,
pull from
yeah.
instead of pulling from our
Sure.
district small
I don't
funds.
disagree.
I would be okay with Central West Coast at 0. Put a line in there. I think when you look at what they're doing, they're going to kill me because I'm also the chair of that group. So,
But also they could look for like that
There-
Tourism Ucluelet and stuff, right?
you know, I look at the Care Network. We know that that's a group. Regardless, again, you're right. It's a bigger conversation, and we haven't had that yet. But
We should have that soon, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Pacific Rim Whale Festival. Okay. What was it? Raincoast Education Society.
Yeah, we just put a.
Okay, I'm just going through them all.
Raincoats. Can you put it down for 4,500 just to see what that looks like? Do you humor me if you haven't done that already?
Raincoast.
There was a 9,000 ask, I believe.
What did
We
they
put it to
9,000.
1,000.
Oh, you did. Ooh, okay then.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Being that we are trying to pull out of some COVID things, and we know we're all here with the options of masks and no masks right now, I'm just wondering if the Wellfest has had a rough go prior to COVID, and then COVID didn't do anybody any favors. I'm wondering that if in the future a little bit of support might not resurrect something that did bring people to the West Coast, and
It's
not
all
that
volunteer based.
Yeah,
I agree.
it's volunteer, but they also get RMI money as well, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's very specific what RMI will cover, though.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not getting 13,400 this year. It's anything surplus would be just carried over to the next year. So, but it does cover some of our entertainers that are coming. And the Whale Festival is starting on Friday.
Why is that number still the same, 12,000? Donna?
You're under budget.
We're under
You
budget.
have 12 grand to spend.
Oh, we have
That's my
12 grand
point.
to spend now?
Yes. So
Oh,
we just-
goodness sakes. Oh, that's
you get
great.
spending it and just so we can move on.
Okay. That's much better.
Okay, so we haven't. Were we?
What is he talking about?
They're just being those two. Just leave them
Peanuts.
alone. They're just.
I'm going to split you two up.
Yikes.
Okay, let's
We're
keep
not,
going.
there's 0.
Lara, keep going. You've taken charge, so just get this.
Were we upping
It's 0.
and adding and upping the Whale Fest, giving the Whale Fest?
Can you
what about
put-
half for the Whale Fest?
Can you?
Help cover some of the entertainers.
A little bit.
Can we go 750 for the Whale Fest?
Do whatever you want. Throw it in
Half
there.
Throw it in there.
750 Whale Fest.
That's half their.
Uh,
I think you got it. You can't just say 0 for the West Coast Forest Society. Yes, they did get what they asked the ACRD for, but
but this is a different.
Well,
one.
then,
you need to
well, then,
recuse yourself from
if
this.
we have,
it's been a long day, you know. We're just trying
guys,
to get things
if we
sorted out
haven't
here.
had the conversation about the Care Network, which we should ask for a report for that, like we should ask for that, we should give them some money. What? How much do we have in the bottom line again, Donna? Sorry. Don't you love this?
Yeah, we're up. We're down.
11,558.
Give Care Network half what they're looking for.
Give them 5.
Because they're still gonna trap the cats without the grant.
Yeah,
They're
we
still
need to
gonna
do
do all the work. They're just gonna be.
Put 5,000 in there. Thank you.
Oh, yikes.
Well, we have to get a program going in this community
I don't
regardless.
disagree.
So it's
So,
So
In-
what about, so C money for Central West Coast Forest Society?
So, but
Redfish, they're
in,
now redfish.
in conversation, I'm just, when it comes to the Care Society, I did talk with
James?
directors here when it came down to what Tafina was talking
Mm-hmm.
about and how bylaw, how much business and things that they're doing are maybe already something that is in the capacity of our bylaw, and maybe they were looking at something that was going to be sort of a contractual pay for service sort of thing, as opposed to just
funding them.
yeah, and when we may be already doing some of those things on our own, and how much were they actually doing, and what is the cost associated with that?
I don't
And
think
it's
we're doing-
probably a lot more information. We don't have a report on it, so we don't know, but it is a topic for sure.
And we need to bring them in and
Yeah.
have that discussion.
Yeah, we have
I-
to have an open conversation.
Ms. Monteith?
Thank you, through the mayor. I can actually tell you they are going to be a delegation March 29th.
Good.
Good.
And following that, we would have a report probably at the next meeting after that.
Well, Central West Coast is too late for the tourism Ucluelet grants and aid or any of those. So do you want to give them?
You know, if you're going to look at the two, for myself, Raincoast Education Society is a big advocate in the elementary school, and you know, keeping that program and the bus and the cost of fuel, et cetera, et cetera. If you're looking at something, you know, I'd like to see it, you know, at least 50%. You
Yeah.
know, up that to 4,500 would be my.
Yeah,
I concur.
Because they hit
fine.
more people, right?
Yeah.
That one?
Well,
I concur. It's the kids. in
educate
the-
our
it's-
kids.
Yeah.
Kids and
So
the
you're-
kitties.
Kids and the kitties. There you go. Kids and kids.
$3,058 left.
I don't even like cats. Oh, sorry.
Said that on mic. I would actually give the rest to the res, actually.
I don't
because
think we can
that'll-
be friends, by the way.
I know.
To the
I'm
res.
sorry.
Raincoast.
Yeah, I would.
So are we giving?
What was the Trail Society asking? What was it for?
Can we
That
just,
was
hang on
for the signage on the Ancient Cedars Trail,
Why don't you?
isn't it?
Why don't you give
You know, looking at the list here, I'm satisfied with it. And Donna, if you have, sorry, Ms. Monteith, if you have 3,000, couldn't we just leave that for council discretionary later on? Because we may have a group, Care Network, that's going to come in and may want to have another ask. I'm okay with what I see on the list there.
Absolutely, this is council's decision. If you don't want to allocate it all, you certainly don't have to. So that will leave us about $3,000 left. And as I said before, there are some that are also receiving funds already through the RMI program.
I would concur with the mayor. I don't think we need to force ourselves to divvy out the last of the money right now, especially when we have some questions coming down the pipe. We want more information about we want to make some decisions, more information. So I don't think we need to even. Could we hold off on the care thing even at this point?
They'd probably spay less cats at 5,000. So I don't think it would kill the program, but I don't.
But could we hold off until we have that discussion with them on the 29th?
Yeah.
So my sense is the discussion that we're going to have on the 29th and then the following meeting is not what this program is. I believe they're coming in to talk about the service of animal care and how it relates to bylaw. This
That's fair.
This program is a separate, specific to cats program.
And we do have a.
No, they've done
Feral
great
cat
work. They're
issue.
doing a lot of work for no compensation. So I think there's an obligation upon us and to support them. And I look forward to their delegation
That's
and
good.
seeing what we can do. So I'm satisfied with the actual for 2022 and leaving us a little bit in the bank for optional.
I agree.
Okay. So
In
do you,
kind, no.
In kind.
Oh, in kind. Okay, well that's an easy one. That's just under all councils. What do you call us on the one slide during the budget?
Yeah, so the in-kind, through the mayor, the in-kind contributions is how we basically write off rent of district-owned facilities for the different societies. There's a couple that we can actually cross off the list right now. So the Chamber of Commerce one is a 0 because it's I believe it's in relation to the Edge to Edge marathon, and we're already partnering with that, and we had already made an assumption that we would be providing space for that.
Sorry, I just did it anyway. Sorry.
Yeah. And then of course, people wanting their rent reduced, it's exclusively leasing rent space. So the West Coast Resource Society and the child care societies at the UCC and UAC, they are big asks, but
Could you scroll down a little bit so we can see the bottom of that?
oh yeah, sure. Nothing else really popped out at me though.
No, you just mentioned the West Coast Reserve. What's
Yeah.
with that line item?
5,000. That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
So that would be similar to the Child Care Society, where they are looking for a reduction of rent in our facility. So it would be revenue not received.
Right. Okay. Interesting that went down from 2021.
Mm-hmm.
What are you struggling with?
So it's not a lot of money, and it's because it's just in kind, and it's shooting myself and Marilyn and other Toastmasters in the foot. But when I look at this, I look at there is community give in, you look at the Rotary, you look at it, there's a community involvement where the Toastmasters is just a club. That's like Rochelle saying, I want to start a Let's Wear Different Hairpieces club. And will the District of Ucluelet please let me have a room so that people can come once a week or once a month, and we can do that. It's just a startling difference. And I was the one who put my hand up and told Marilyn, like, why don't we just ask for an in-kind? Because otherwise the people who are, attending the club meetings are paying, we have dues, and then our rate goes up, and that's how we then compensate for it. But is it the one thing that doesn't mix with all the others?
That's
and
true,
it is
you're
just
right.
in kind, and maybe I should just be quiet. Sorry, Marilyn.
No, bring it up.
Oh, bring it up. It's good. That's a
Well,
good.
Toastmasters International is a nonprofit society, and that's what we're a part of. I think club is a bad word, but it's an educational program that anybody can partake in if they belong to us.
But you do pay a fee though.
But you
pay
pay
for it though. Yeah.
You get accreditation and
Right.
Well, at the end of the day, whether you're going to Boy Scouts or Girl Guides, you're all paying fees to go there as well, right? So it's across the board. I'm okay with the all what I'm seeing here with the in kind.
Sure, I just want to say that loud because it did bother me
Yeah.
last year, and I was the one who said, let's go for it. Why wouldn't we? So. And I am going to ask for a room for my hairpieces.
You're funny. Yeah, I will join. Yeah. So I wear ball caps. Thank you. Hey. Maybe this
That's
winter
okay.
I'll
The
take
next
some
time I
months
shave
off.
my head, I'll make one for you, Mako.
I'll start being one of those guys. Sorry. Okay. Anyways, in kind, we're good as is.
So just want to point out that you're $9,000 over budget, and that will
That. I thought we were all good. Oh, Jesus.
that relates to taxes. So
Oh man. Is the
Sorry.
the Childhood Society, do they not pay any rent?
not if you approve all of that big number. Yeah.
My goodness, like that childcare is.
Misfortune, if you have comments? Yeah, your hand. Did you have your hand up?
To the mic.
Yeah, it's fine.
To
No,
the
no.
mic, to the mic.
That was actually an error I made. I gave Miss Monteith the number 150, and it's actually 50 for the Sunday Market Society.
Oh man, thank God that's a.
Saved 100. You're welcome.
Right there. Whoosh.
We're
You're
looking for
welcome.
9,100.
And the Child Care Society is a combination of the daycare that's here and the UAC hall. But I,
After school.
Yeah.
West Coast Resource Society, they had the same ask last year, didn't they? Or is this a new ask?
Was
I believe they asked for $5,700 last year
Yep.
as a reduction off their rent. So again, these leases are exclusive, so it means we can't replace it with any other money, right? They're exclusive spaces that
Oh yeah.
we can't get back from.
No. What's your?
And also things like the West Coast Community Resources Society and the Child Care Society, those are things that even if you could put somebody else on, I mean, we need those we need more than we already have. So
Those are so important.
yeah,
Mhm.
Over there.
yeah.
Yeah.
What happens if we push this the way it is?
What is it?
No, honestly,
Taxes, she said taxes.
wow, no, that's what 0.2%.
Oh, yeah, something like that. It's about 1% is about $33,000 now.
Yeah, so
So you would have to direct me by motion to amend the 5-year financial plan to include the overage and the in-kind contribution.
well, the reality is we're
Category.
not going to get $9,000, $9,100 out of this. If you
No,
start
not
looking
if we
at
don't
this
touch
off,
the
unless-
childcare, the WCRS.
Yeah.
So
Because those are the big ones.
that's what's going to have to happen then.
Mm-hmm.
Can't we just give them a key and let them use it?
It's
Nope.
getting late out. Okay, so you've got the first part, the in-kind part. You'll need a motion. And first I'll ask the group here, or is there anybody who'd like to cut anything out of that, or is this a tough ask for the 9,100? Okay, you're shaking your head. We're all. It's our last one, you guys. It's our last budget. It's okay. We can get through it. Would you be able to put? Yeah, you're going to keep on doing. Are we about to delete something, or are you just
No,
doing care over?
Sorry, I just stopped because you started talking. So that one's 50.
There we go. I guess we got the motion here. Recommendation.
I just think it's so crazy because there's spaces. Some of these spaces would sit empty, without, like these little bits and pieces
Mhm.
would probably sit empty. But however, it's going to affect taxpayers because they're sitting empty because we're going over and we have to. It just is there not another solution? Through the mayor to Donna, to Ms. Monteith.
Through the mayor. Well, it looks like we saved a little bit, so we're at 7721 over. It's it's completely up to council how you want to recoup that revenue, and you can certainly direct me to amend the budget.
Rock, paper, scissors, pull it.
You're not doing that. You're in here too long. Let's get going here. Okay. These guys are gonna think we're always like this. Okay, we're just
happy
yeah.
someone's here.
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah.
So much fun.
It's like a performance.
It's performance art. It's a whole different form of performance
Yikes.
So there is a recommendation. You said you're going to need additional motion regarding a change to the 5-year budget. Is that correct?
art. Yeah, it would be option
Yeah,
B.
I think that's yes, actually, you're right, Councillor Hoare. That's what that would be option B. So we would
perfect.
approve this schedule and then do the
There you go.
second motion.
Who wants to speak to that if you'd like?
Okay, fine, because I found it first. I will move that council authorize the grants and aid and in-kind contributions for 2022 as presented in the approved schedule of 2022 grants and aid and council contribution requests, separately or together.
I think we're good to keep going.
And that council directs staff to amend the draft 5-year financial plan by increasing the property tax requisition by an amount equal to the increase in grant and aid contributions as approved in the schedule of 2022 grants and aid and council contribution requests.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say that if we had an endowment with the Barclay Community Forest Funds, we might have more than 20,000 to drop.
You might
into
get
the-
50,000 a year to do it, but it'll be good.
So, just saying that.
Just saying. I've been saying it for years.
You have been, and we're going to be able to look after you. Okay, we're getting there. I can't live with myself. Okay, so did I call that to go? So you made a statement. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Do you need anything else from us on that one?
No, I don't. And if I can find somewhere to cut, I'll do that first before I raise the tax.
Not your wrists.
It's gonna be tough. I can only imagine your gas bill's going up these days, so it's hard to cut.
All right.
Okay, thank you everyone. That was it's always a tough one every year. Moving on, is there any notice of motions? I'm not aware of any. Okay. And we got two correspondence items. First one's from Mr. Skoda. I scribbled a bunch of comments towards some of his comments he made. Just because he did that, I'm going to speak to a couple if you don't mind. He made a comment regarding, I see the official community plan and how housing needs report that I must assume came with significant cost to taxpayers. So all those reports were grants that we've done for housing needs, whether it is with flood mapping, everything we've been successful. Our planning department's been very aggressive. So that is zero taxpayers. So that's, yep. Disconnect between talking the talk and talking the talk. What else do I want to talk about? We cannot continue to grow a community without providing reasonable accommodation for the people who will provide and support services for growth. I think you saw council do that, although I was opposed to the delivery. I think at the end of the day, every time this council has the ability to, has a rezoning application that comes before us, we have taken the opportunity to ask for things like housing, and there has been many, many opportunities. So, Mr. Skoda, again, like I say, if it's totally not factual. If people own a piece of land that is zoned, you have every right to take down your trees. You have every right to use your land that's conforming that's your right, owning the land. But when it does come before this council, I think we have a track record of asking during the rezoning of meeting the needs for reasonable housing. So I'm not in full, I kept on going. I'm not in full agreement here with a lot of his statements here, which is unfortunate. And then obviously going back to the particular, I forget the name of the Cedar and the particular road construction of Leach Road continuing on to Bay Street. Obviously, those homeowners are concerned about that. I just saying that's in the OCP. We've talked about it. I remember when my dad owned the Whale's Tail Motel and all that property, that was talk in the 80s for that road. So again, it's no different in today's OCP. So if there was ever an opportunity to rezone in any kind of big properties, that's obviously when this side of the table would like to review those kind of things in general. Yeah, I think that was it. I appreciate the letter, but I also, like always, we're here to speak if you'd like to have a coffee, if there's anybody having any kind of concerns regarding some of the activities going on in town. And I also wrote down most recently, Ani, I think, is a prime example of how we took our foot down for affordable housing and reasonable housing. So I think we're doing an okay job, in my sense, on the housing front when rezoning applications come before us. And I'd like to get to Patricia's. Patricia has some good questions here. So, does anybody like to speak to Patricia's letter at all? I go for it? Oh, putting me on this? Okay, perfect. I'll start at the last one here, Patricia. It's too bad that you felt that my concerns, dismissing the concerns of the people around the Crow's Nest gang. Yes, I use acronyms like that. I don't mean anything disrespectful when I say that, but it is the Crow's Nest group, and you guys are, so again, okay, I'm just, okay, anyways, I want to just clarify, you wrote it in there. I don't mean anything derogatory or negative towards Jan and her group. Obviously, what's presented, it's, pardon me? Okay. Okay, perfect. And I have the comments and concerns as well, hence why I would like to ensure that, Patricia, that you're being heard and your comments are well received. I'm hoping that, what's your first question here? Yeah, so your first question is regarding the delegation of concerned citizens requested on February 15th for more public meetings to be scheduled. We're going to work on that. Like today you heard about the Peninsula Road update, and I think you heard that there will be good community dialogue with feedback, so you guys are feeling like you're participating in how that's going to unfold. Will public washrooms be provided near the playground? Those are things that obviously we have funding. We have funding. You know, if we had $3 million to go down to the core of this, with the washrooms and a lot of other things, wouldn't be an issue. So we are adding another set of new bathrooms into the parking lot that's behind the crow's nest. Or were you aware of that? Okay, so there are plans, and probably about 4 council meetings ago, we approved a 3-unit bathroom, one of them a wheelchair accessible, to go into the parking lot behind the crow's nest. Because when the walkway behind the secondhand store got in, it was built in a way that was wheelchair accessible. We know that there's some people with limited mobility, just trying to, you know, making sure that there's less hurdles to get to washrooms, to get to your car. So, yeah, for sure. You know, for sure. I mean, if you want to go to the microphone, Patricia, if you don't mind.
Maybe while she's making her way to the microphone, I think the next question is pretty straightforward because we never got a choice in where that crosswalk on Peninsula goes. That isn't up to us. We had no say or no. That is that's that whole road turning down at the co-op to the end of the dock.
Yeah.
Doesn't belong to us, so we never got a choice in that. That wasn't anything that we had control over at all.
One beside the brewery.
Yeah, so that is the Ministry of Transportation. Yeah, they own that road, and they're responsible for it, and they get to do with it as they please.
Oh, okay. That I did not know. I didn't know. It's but if we're looking to them for direction, one has to question some of their decisions. But anyway, going back to washrooms, certainly I can appreciate the need for a wheelchair accessible washroom. I'm just wondering, you're putting it in an area, though, that did you ask the community if that's the best area for it? Because I hear from people who use the playground that it's really difficult to get children to a washroom when they need to go, and that one that you're proposing is no closer to the playground than the ones by the aquarium. So that's part of my overall concern, is that when you're making these decisions, who do you ask where the best place to put another washroom is? And I guess that's basically what I'm asking, is that, you know, we definitely need more washrooms, and I understand from listening to past council meetings that you understand that as well. It's just that when you decide where to place them, that's where I begin to wonder where the disconnect comes.
Yeah, and that's a fair question. I think, you know, do we have a washroom location plan? I know I'm optimistic that when we drop in this one behind the crow's nest, that it's done in a way that we'll be able to duplicate. That's our expectation. But do we have a master plan where other bathrooms will go? You know, over the years, we added one at the Chamber of Commerce building. We knew that we had to put one up there, so that was, I think, installed about 4 years ago. We know that there was one down by the aquarium that was done when the aquarium did its work in rezoning and everything. That's one of the things. So we're just, you know, the skate park needs to get one. We need to, but we haven't gone out to the public and saying, hey, where do we need bathrooms? But we know that when we do go out to the public and ask for feedback, like on Amphitrite Point and other things going, washrooms is a big one that always comes up. So anytime we have the ability to build, you know, brick and mortar buildings or anything, washrooms are a big one. Water fountains are a big one. Parking's a big one.
Okay, but let's go back to why, if you are spending money on one in the parking lot behind the crow's nest, which someday may be needed, but when you've got an area that's already in greater use, why wasn't it decided that we'd put a washroom closer to the playground? Because even if it's wheelchair accessible, there are people that could probably need an access to wheelchair accessible in that area. When I know that parking lot is used in the summer, but in the winter, it's probably not. And so that's my quandary.
No, it's all legit stuff. You know, I know we don't always get it right, but these are all good questions you're asking, and I don't have the answer. But, you know, as we go forward, go ahead.
I can answer that one. We're going back many years when we, in fact, it was the previous council, purchased that property to turn it into a parking lot, and the plan even way back then was to have washrooms there and lighting and and so it's been in the plan for probably 7 years, and we're finally getting them. But no, I can see why the playground could use one, and there was a portable one there for quite a while that was quite well used. So maybe we can look at moving the one that's at Tugwell Fields that's locked all the time, moving it back to the playground.
Yeah, go please.
I just want to make a comment because it's timely, and last night either on Global News or Check, and I can't remember which one, but there were these $500,000 washroom on a street. And so when we stop and we think about how expensive these things are to create and what our tax base is and how many we can actually afford to, anyways, it just blows my mind. So I think we can't have everything all at once all the time, and it doesn't mean we don't also need some there, and we also need some in a lot of places. And if you've ever driven from here to Victoria, you know how few stops there are where you can actually use a washroom where you're not going into a gas station or a McDonald's or somewhere where you're not actually a patron. And there was something that just came out recently in municipal government stuff about a mandate that there's going to be to have more push on fully serviced rest stops and such, but that doesn't solve the downtown core. Just thought it was timely that washrooms were on the news last night, and they're really, really expensive.
And I understand that, because I'm not saying that you can just put washrooms wherever and you've got all the money in the world to do it. I'm just questioning why you tell me that washrooms were in the plan for the the parking lot behind the Crow's Nest from the inception, but I'm also asking why can those plans not change? Why, if the money is there to build those washrooms, why can't it be used someplace else?
Well, again, it's a fair question. Did you want to answer it? At the end of the day, we made a decision on the back room of the parking lot to put bathrooms in there with the anticipation that it will be well used. And that decision has been made by ourselves, and we've done it, and we'll ensure that, if other opportunities come up, we will.
So what I'm hearing is that you were very reluctant to be flexible when situations change.
Well, the planning's been done, the infrastructure's in, and the building's probably being delivered within the next month. So to put the building beside the play park, which is about to get an overhaul, I'm comfortable sitting here with the parking lot getting a bathroom in there. You've been heard.
Okay.
And
so we're too far down the line to do anything different, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Okay, moving on to information. What? Oh,
Question. Do we not have some design going on for the playground that still has to happen? I know there's grants and things. Mr. Gregg, perhaps you can speak to it.
Through the mayor. Yes, the playground is a sort of project within a project. It's not funded within the Village Green improvements. So I wouldn't suggest that washroom construction is within the budget that was anticipated or that's in the budget for the playground. As the report from February 22nd, we addressed something like this because it was a question that was raised by many people in the public input that came in on the Village Green design. Numerous people asked, well, what about more washrooms? And I think that we've had some discussion at the staff level. Well, two things. In that report, so we addressed the question about public washrooms. They're not in the scope of the current project for the Village Green. They never were anticipated to be part of that project. It would increase the budget and the scale of the project. Definitely, I think we all agree that over time we probably are going to need washrooms in the parking lot and near the playground and near the aquarium and Peninsula Road. We need to have probably additional spaces. Those aren't currently designed or funded, with the exception of the one that's going into the Cedar Road parking hub. But we have done some initial look at, and near absolutely having a washroom or washrooms close to the playground would be ideal. And one of the potential things is the municipal office building that's there there's a potential to do an addition or draw on what are the water, power, the services that are already there in the building. So to do an addition and do some public exterior accessed washrooms as part of that building is a concept that there seems to be space where it would fit. Again, hasn't been designed, engineered, or budgeted yet, but that's something that is definitely on the radar as we try to highlight in that report in February. So to get back to the question on the playground design, yes, there is going to be a separate project for designing the playground. It's kind of a unique piece involving community input from the outset on sort of the concept, which is really about kids, parents, anyone else who's interested in play, giving feedback on what kind of play do you design for, what are the elements that people want to see, is it an iconic sculptural thing or more natural play, all those kind of things, and sort of presenting those kind of options to start generating the thought for the playground designers. That's going to be rolling out. We don't have a date yet for that, but I'd say soon, coming weeks, we'll be announcing that. And the idea being, weather permitting, hopefully do that as sort of start with a community meeting or charrette, potentially in a tent in the right next to the playground, outdoors and in the fresh air. So, hope that helps.
No, it does, and I think I look forward to that next phase and start planning what that playground looked like in bathrooms, and that's going to be the next one to jump onto. So it's going to be in the queue. Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Okay, we have 5 information items. Does anybody want to pull any out?
I think based on that we are going to hear more about care in the upcoming whatever, I don't have anything. I think we can just accept those, in my opinion.
Okay. We're good?
No, exactly.
Mayor's announcements. I'm going to pass it over to Councillor McEwen. You want to talk about the Whale Fest? Putting you on the spot.
I can give a little insight. The Board of Directors has been working for at least 6 months along with our coordinator to plan a festival that was really hard to plan because we didn't know if we could have in-person events or not until the last public health order came out, which doesn't restrict the numbers of people indoors. And so that we planned for some virtual events and we planned for some outdoor events, and then when that PHO came out, we finally were able to plan for some indoor events. So there won't be a parade. It wasn't enough notice for us to get the parade organized, unfortunately. There won't be a chow down for the same reason. But we do have 2 events at Heartwood. One is Dinner in the Gardens, rain or shine, so he's going to have tents out there, and it'll be a traditional cedar planked salmon dinner. And another one, midweek, he's doing marvelous mollusks, so it's a cooking demonstration. He'll have his restaurant set up theater style, and he will be demonstrating how to purchase, cook, and enjoy all the shellfish. So that one should be really good too. There is Uzumi Taiko drummers are coming on this Saturday to the main hall here at the community center. They're doing a family performance at 1:45, I believe it is, and then they're doing 2 drumming workshops, one for little kids and one for older kids. So that's happening Saturday afternoon here at the main hall. And another big one, the Barnacle Ballads with Tiller's Folly. It's unfortunately moving to Tofino this year, but it will be at the Long Beach Lodge Surf Club, and that will be the last Saturday of the festival. We've got the Whale Fest poster artist competition in full swing, and we'll pick our winner and announce next year's poster artist at the Barnacle Ballads event on the 26th. What else can I tell you? Art Splash, that's not a Whale Fest event, that's a Praz event, but it does start Friday, always in conjunction with the Whale Festival, and that will be at Black Rock's Ballroom this year instead of in the foyer. Yeah, and there's lots of educational speakers. There's Kids Day here, there's Kids Day in Tofino. So it's kind of a quasi-normal whale festival, but not quite.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, we did our best with the information that we had at the time.
Thank you for that, man. Moving on to council committee reports, starting with Councillor McEwen. I should have just segued into that.
Thank you. February 24th was our budget meeting. March 1st was our Harbour Authority meeting. This coming Friday, March 18th, I will have an in-camera with the Vancouver Island Regional Library board because of the strike action being taken on by BCGEU. Their contract expired December 31st, 2020, and so there is some arbitration going on, but I don't know where they're at, so I'll find out more about that on Friday. And that's it for me.
Thank you. And Councillor Kemps?
I attended on March 8th the Euclid Chamber of Commerce AGM, and I'd be happy to announce that we have a new chair. Graham Aspinall is our new chair. Sandy Rance is our vice chair. But on to more exciting news. Euclid is up for the best small town through CBC. And we're in the running. We're really good in the running, so we have until midnight tonight. So it is on the community page. I put it on my personal page, on my councillor page, if everyone could please vote for Euclid. We're almost 90%. We're almost winning, so we know we're the best, so let's just vote us in. That's it.
And do you mind sending us the direct link for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
I believe Councillor Cole did already, or at least you sent it to me.
Oh, you did? Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Hoare?
I voted before I came to council because I figured it was important. I don't have anything to report beyond the budget and Harbour Authority.
Okay, excellent. And Councillor Cole?
I love how everybody's pace of talking speeds up right about now because we're looking at the clock and looking at all you poor people. So, to be succinct, before we had our budget, I had an ACRD budget. There have been lots of these budget. There was a Backroads Task Force meeting on the 28th that our CAO and myself attended. The colloquiate presented a proposal to which the task force all absorbed, and we're coming back together again at a future date to talk about things that can be done sooner than later for this upcoming season. And so I'll report back on that after the next meeting. West Coast, I missed our Harbour Authority by a few minutes, I think, because you guys weren't as fast as the one I did, but I understand it was quick and painless. I did catch the West Coast Committee via Zoom again, but from Vancouver. Nothing to report there. Everything that came up there had went to the ACRD on the next date, which was another ACRD with budget and the regional hospital meetings. So lots of things going on there, but most things like here all geared budget-wise. And then there was the one thing I wanted to bring up about the West Coast Force. Anyways, we talked about that. So I will have more to report on the back roads and some hospital conversation down the road. And I just want to take a moment. I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm going to take a shout out to I am hiring not me, but BC Ambulance Service. I'm putting it out there that we are hiring. And if anybody has a Class 4 driver's license, you don't have to be a paramedic, but a Class 4 driver's license is an exceptional hire, is what they call it, in rural and remote communities that need help staffing the ambulance service. So it's a bit of a process to get going, but I can help expedite it. And you just need a Class 4 driver's license, and I'm ready to hire anybody who, like-minded community members who want to contribute in a meaningful way to work that is very satisfying at the end of your day. That's my plug. Thank you for the moment.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that your station's in that state of affairs, which is disappointing to hear. Very disappointing. But yes, I will circle back. I definitely, if you need something, I know a few people. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cole. And I have nothing to report here officially. And question period. Anybody via Zoom? We got some hands?
There are no hands via Zoom, but I do have some comments. People have emailed in to communityinput.ca.
Excellent.
The first one is entitled Village Square Redo. It was sent by Peter Timmermans. It reads, Is it an option for District of Ucluelet to request that the Ministry of Highways relinquish control of Main Street up to Peninsula? If so, Ucluelet could then shape the look of Main Street unencumbered by provincial highways criteria. And will there be a no RV parking enforced on all of Main Street, perhaps even a time limit during daylight business hours? Peter Timmermans, 1958 Bay Street.
Mr. Gregg, do you have any comments on any of those for me?
The first question about the question of whether the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure would consider divesting the road to the municipality so it became a municipal road, and that there's some history to that discussion. We've had some indication that they would be quite willing to hand over the roads with it. I think some of the discussion from Ucluelet has been, we don't want to accept it unless it's a brand spanking new road that doesn't have millions of dollars of repairs that need to be done to it. So the road surface staying within the highway jurisdiction keeps the maintenance burden with the Ministry of Transportation. So definitely for all of, potentially, Peninsula Road and Main Street down to the wharf, that's a discussion that I think has some bigger implications. But it's raising an excellent question, because it is a bit awkward it's a provincial highway, but really it's a street within the center of town too. So we're always kind of having to work with that jurisdiction.
RV parking.
RV parking. We tend to try to focus RV parking in better places in the long term. ROCP and transportation plans talk about identifying some areas, and I think the need's going to become greater over time to have some specific RV parking places. There's a parking lot on Cedar Road opposite the RCMP station that's very small, has been used a bit, but it doesn't handle many of those RVs. Also, there's policy around, once the school is done being a construction site, having discussions with the school district about partnering where they have a very generally empty parking lot during the summer months when the RV parking is most in demand. And then looking also at capturing on other areas of town, whether it's at the down on Seaplane Base Road or other places where you can sort of have more space to be parking those larger vehicles. It's a very good question, and we also have the same questions around bus parking. We had some questions about tour buses. One that had parked in the middle of the road not long ago, which is not legal, but the bus driver did it anyways. And so these things happen. And the other one that isn't unique to Ucluelet, or it's really also the servicing and the loading, where you have a small compact core in town. Not every business has a loading bay or a space for a truck, and because some of the deliveries come long distances, they come in pretty large trucks. And so that it really becomes a bit of a traffic management issue of the time of day of some of those deliveries, when there's basically double parking and taking a lane, is also something that needs to be managed probably over time. Specifically, I think it's an issue critical in the summer months. I don't know if that answers entirely Mr. Timmerman's questions, but they're good questions.
Great questions, and thank you for the question, Mr. Timmerman.
The next submission is from Nora O'Malley of Black Press Media, or the Westerly News. She reads, "Hi everyone. Earlier this year, Tourism Ucluelet was considering increasing the MRDT hotel tax from 2% to 3%. If implemented, could using the additional 1% garnered from the MRDT tax be put into the Water Capital Reserve? Tourism Ucluelet is expected to collect $355,000 from general MRDT funds in 2022. Thanks, Nora O'Malley."
Do you want me to segue to you, or do you want me to start that?
Through the mayor, I will tell you that I think that Miss Fortune actually at this point, because she's intimately involved with the whole MRDT program, would have a better answer than I. Thank you.
That's a very deep question, but it's it's a good question. It's a great
Until
question.
Bruce was here, right? Yes. A little lower for me. it is quite a process. First of all, they're just in the process of putting their application together for the MRDT. MRDT has very specific regulations around it at this time, and I will preface by saying at this time, but at this time that is not something that the funds could go towards. The other part of it is with the additional part of with the MRDT to move it to 3%. There's also specifics in terms of what the funds can be used for that as well. So it is very specific, and at this time I would say no.
Thank you. Any other ones?
Yes. Again, from Nora O'Malley. She has a note regarding the single-use plastics. It says, "Hi Paula, I guess you didn't see the press release issued on Friday. Tofino is the first to ban plastic utensils.
Thanks, Nora.
Yuki will likely be the second." She comments that Port Moody banned plastic stir sticks, but not utensils. Nora O'Malley.
Thanks, Nora. Yeah, and Nora, I know you're listening. That's one of the struggles we have with that whole hotel tax is we're put in a box, and that square needs to fit in the box. One of the big wins we had a few years ago is that we took all the online platforms and put it towards affordable housing, and which is about I want to say it's about $200,000 a year. It's substantial. Anyways, the online platform is good. So as soon as we were eligible to do that, we did that quite quickly. There was no hesitation. And I know with the additional 1%, they're trying to figure out what they could use that for outside of, we all know we don't need more advertising. What we need is, some of the costs regarding tourism to be downloaded for them to contribute. We all know what's happening in Tofino with sewer. They're trying something creative there, and with this water thing, the province is listening, and we will continue to shake that tree and hopefully make our case going forward. Yeah. Any other questions for us?
Yes.
How many more you have?
So far, this is the last one.
Okay.
Through the mayor, this email is entitled "Final Remarks for Agenda Item 9.2. The submission is by Whitney Tusarkani, now Tilson, I believe.
Okay, got it.
Okay. It reads, "In regards to Agenda Item 9.2, variance request for 848 Marine Drive, I did not get to give closing remarks before voting. I would like to note that I am not building a business before being established in town. That was an assumption being made by the council. I am a local to Ucluelet, have lived here for 5 years, and am an active member of the community. I've volunteered with many organizations, and I care about this community and the environment. I do not feel that I was heard by the council. Assumptions were made that I am not a local and am just interested in making money off of accommodations at the expense of the neighborhood while asking for special treatment. None of these things are true. I only brought the variance forward as the geotechnical engineer said that building close to the steep slope is not an option and that there is a 5-meter additional offset that other neighboring lots do not have. To say that there is plenty of building space without going there and measuring the 5-meter offset from the slope or the 15-meter setback does not seem fair. I am building a 500 square foot cabin, which is very small, and yet this does not fit within those parameters. The lot is zoned for up to 10 nightly rentals, which I am not taking advantage of. I am only trying to have a small business in the town I've called home for some time, not a huge development from someone who is not a part of this community. I feel that the council made a decision based on improper assumptions and on personal feelings rather than truly reviewing the community planning recommendation based on their thorough review of the land and on the full geotechnical report. The planner recommended approving the development variance permit. Regardless, I appreciate the council's time. Thank you, Whitney Tursakani, and in brackets it reads Tilson." And that is the final email of the evening.
Yeah, if you wish.
I just want to apologize and just be very clear that I made a philosophical point and that I respect everything that I'll say the name wrong, than Ms. Whitney just shared with us, and that I know that a decision was made based on the facts about the logistics and the land and not my philosophy. So I'm sorry if you feel that way and that I made that comment if it offended you.
Okay. And again, we're looking at the land use decision for myself. So, and that is the only power that we have at this table is land use. Okay. Any other comments or any other emails?
There are no further comments, hands raised, or emails at this time.
Okay, for all those that are participating, I want to say thank you for the questions and for sticking it out this evening. Turning to the audience, if there's any questions, Patricia, feel free to go to the microphone.
I apologize for just beating the dead horse, but anyway, there was one final question I asked that wasn't addressed, and that's regard to parking. My point was that our group of concerned citizens is not simply concerned with the parking around the Crow's Nest, but in the whole downtown area. And I am specifically concerned about the parking that will be lost by the Municipal Hall across from the aquarium. And I wonder, I mean, this would not increase the cost of the project. It would simply decrease the cost of the project. And I'm wondering why we can't have a second look at that. Because the past 2 days I have driven through that area. It's been rainy. And all of those stalls have been full the times I have driven through there. And I do realize, I do think, and I do hope you realize that if you take those away, you are probably cutting in to visitation to the aquarium. And there are other spots around in the area too that I think you need to have a second look at. And that's basically one of the main things that our group has been asking for, is to have a deeper look into the parking situation. So that was my final question.
Okay,
Will
thank
we
you,
be
Patricia.
revisiting the parking and not just the Crow's Nest?
Okay, thank you, Patricia.
Okay. Rina Vigneault, 926 Peninsula. I had forgotten my question earlier, and it's about these sticky notes. Because we go to those meetings, we put our sticky notes, but we never hear about the sticky notes again. And I want to know, how are they compiled? Can they be compiled and that be put in the paper? Okay, these were the opinions that came out with those sticky notes. Or could they be presented in a town hall meeting or an open house? Like, it would be nice to hear, because we never hear about what happens with those sticky notes after. So, and that said, now that the Peninsula, you have passed something, one budget for the Peninsula Road, will we have a town hall meeting?
Yeah, so there will be community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
That was the question I asked Mr. McIntosh.
Yeah.
And they will be doing engagement, so including sticky notes. I know I'm going to get Mr. Gregg to talk about your sticky notes. Do you have any other questions?
No, that's all.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
He's going to talk about your sticky notes and
Thank
what
you.
happens to
and
them.
I hope you consider the town hall meetings.
Yeah, for sure. We may not call them town, maybe a committee of the whole, but we'll make sure that there's community dialogue and there's openness and sticky notes and the rest of it. So, you bet.
Through the mayor, it was a good question. The point raised earlier about the town hall meetings, and we've had some, and COVID has certainly made that awkward to have. Weren't for a while there, weren't able to have open houses, so we've had some virtual things. But whether it's a town hall or we've had some committee of the whole meetings in the last year. One was on the Lot 16 development. The other one was on the growth management options. They worked quite well to sort of get that more of a discussion out there. The question about what happens with the input, what happens with the I love it. What happens with their sticky notes? In some cases, you can see that those, we photograph them and make sure that those are available. But typically, in a process with public consultation like that, that's gold. That is great to have people's opinions like that captured. And whether it's staff or whether we have a consultant who's helping, as with the Peninsula Road, they will, typically then report back to council on here's what was heard. So in the case of like this sort of compressed timeline with the Village Green project, what we had time for and what we had the budget for was to put out a survey that the consultants put out, and they compiled all of the comments, the 400 plus responses. All of those were provided to council. That's equivalent to the sticky notes, and although this was a survey as opposed to notes on a board, all of that was provided to council as part of that thick February 22nd agenda package. But it also was provided, it was to the design team, so that input and those comments and concerns are part of the discussions among the team who've been tasked with designing the project. And in regards to the parking, council did pass a motion, and it's, I think, on page 8 of the agenda in the minutes there, that was directing staff to work with the consultants to go back and look at, and it was specific to the parking in that area on the intersection near the Crow's Nest. And our engineers, the civil and traffic engineers, have been given that task to revisit what can be done there. The motion was specific to either try to reduce the amount of parking that may be lost in that location, or is it feasible to leave that out of this project at this time and essentially not touch that area? There's implications for, essentially that's what the engineers are tasked with, is making sure that can that be achieved safely, essentially. So.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Bonus round, go ahead. I'm getting hungry. They are. Yeah. They're getting their money's worth out of us tonight.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the question is, as that process, so we're talking specifically about the parking, the loss of parking in front of the Crow's Nest, I think is how it was worded. How do we find out how that is progressing and what that is doing, and how do we, when we make suggestions, whether it's this one or any other suggestion, how do we know how those are progressing? I understand you give them to different people and all that stuff, but how do we know what's going on, and how do we access that information that we have made our comments about and that we're concerned about, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're going to consider it, and then it's like, well, okay, great. How do we know?
As staff as Mr. Gregg just indicated there, that let's refer the one in front of your place. There was surveys sent out, and then the consultant would then summarize, the common theme and all the different questions, and then it come back to us as a staff report, which I believe you were here. I wasn't here for that meeting. Thank you, Councillor McEwen, and then it's then presented. Staff presents all the points. You hear all that kind of stuff, and that's how it comes back to us. Do we go back to the people that filled out the application survey and giving them some feedback? No, we don't.
No, she's asking if so now that we have asked staff to come back.
Oh, round 2 part. Okay.
Round 2 part, and then it's like, okay, so they're sitting in limbo. Really, what you have to do is just come here all the time. No.
Yeah.
But we don't get a chance to comment on it before it comes to you, and then it's suddenly like, okay, now we all want to talk at the same time because now we've finally seen the picture. So is there any way for people to have awareness before, or is there time during the presentation to you for us to?
There is going to be, staff is going to be bringing back obviously a revision, and they're going to go back to the traffic peeps, and then it's going to come back before us, and once whatever that looks like, I imagine there will be an opportunity for the public, yourself, to speak to it. So am I missing it there?
So no, Jen, just so you know, the Friday before today is when the agenda becomes available, and you'll see it on there, and you'll know whether you want to come and spend your night sitting here. And that's when we get the information about it as well as the agenda. So that's how you find out where the next moment it will be, where you have an opportunity.
And some of these things, they do feel like they're really sped up because of grants. But we need grants in a small municipality because our tax base is so low, right? Mm-hmm. So there's like it's like a love-hate relationship for grant money. But also it makes it very speedy. For us sitting up here as well, because there's so much reporting to, but you just have to trust the process and trust us that we, love this community and but you know what I mean, like there's certain things that just they're so sped up that's just the way
this is what we get. So anyways, Mr. Gregg, would you have closing remarks so we could get some dinner, please?
Absolutely, I'll keep it brief. I just want to make sure that there's a clear expectation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because the council motion was for us to, go back and work with the consultants to look at, revisit the design. And as we tried to explain it, I mean, this, ideally, we would have loads of time for open houses and town halls and more sticky notes. I've tried to explain that, this is on quite a compressed timeline because we have to get the thing constructed from a year from now. And that may sound like a lot of time. It's not. We need to get this thing bid out. There is not a process of further public consultation within the time or budget of the project. Council absolutely has the ability to change that, but it has serious implications on us being able to deliver the project. And the task we've been given at this point is go deliver this project on time and on budget, and that design is proceeding. So we'll be reporting out back to council, but I just wanted to manage the expectation there isn't another round of public engagement as part of this project process and timeline at this point.
Thank you for the clarity. But there will be something coming back to council.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm referring to. So it's not going to be a big secret. It's going to come back to council. The public will be able to see it, and whether they like it or not, it will be another.
It'll be back on council's table to discuss. Absolutely.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you mind if we adjourn this evening? And I honestly want to say thank you for you guys coming, and the letters, Patricia and everyone else, and you guys being involved. And when you guys do meet your concerned citizens, meet again just reach out to me. I'd love to be able to, and if there's something specific that you have, so you're not all attacking me at once, if you want me to come with my little book with a bit of notes and some information, I'm there for you guys. We all are. So again, at no point do you feel any reservations about reaching out to us individually.
Thanks for coming tonight.
I know we're here for you guys. Honestly, we're on the same team. I want to make sure you guys feel a little bit. Thanks again for your time. We're adjourned.